I had song brothers and sisters. Jazakallah khair for coming out. Missing sleep and stuff. It's Imam Suhaib Webb from Boston, Massachusetts. He gave us the idea to do a reading and in-depth deciphering of the 40 hadith, and inshallah, whenever he comes around, he'll be doing more, and inshallah, he'll be giving us ijazah. So, without further ado, Imam Suhaib Webb.
So, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina wa Habibina Rasulillah. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barak alayhi fil awwaleen wa fil akhirin wa fil malil alayhi rabbil alameen. So, alhamdulillah, Abdul Basit and Salman and myself were last few days ago, talking, and I said to them, maybe we should just read together, just us three, through 40 hadith. And then, we decided let's just do it for the people, alhamdulillah, so we can learn from each other and inshallah benefit. And last time we spent some time, we read the introduction of this great scholar who wrote this book, and we talked about him, and we talked about why he put it in the book Al-Adhkar, which is a book that contains different du'as and supplications and dhikrs and so on and so forth. Why would he put a collection of hadith like in that book? So he talked about the larger meaning of dhikr. So that's why the ulama are called what? Ahlu dhikr. فَسَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ فَلَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of dhikr, because they're always remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we read through his introduction. We talked about why he wrote this book, what was the reason that he wrote this book. We talked about the conditions of weak hadith that can be used. And we talked about how one of the greatest fitna of this age is that the common Muslim has confused hadith da'if with hadith mawdu'. So you'll hear people say, hadith da'if, and they'll react in a way that traditionally weak hadith did not create the type of reaction amongst the people. And that's why we said, like we mentioned Imam Suyuti rahimahullah in Tadrib al-Rawi, and Abu Amr ibn Salah in his introduction to Hadith Muqaddimah ibn Salah, he said you're allowed to relate weak hadith, but nobody allows you to relate Hadith Mawdu'. Hadith Mawdu' is like purposely fabricated. And we gave, the example of Suyuti rahimahullah. He mentioned there was this guy who used to sell like cantaloupes or melons. So he's like, man ishtara batikh fayadkhulu jannah. Whoever buys melons goes to Jannah. Like that's obviously, he happens to be the guy who sells watermelons. Astaghfirullah billah. This is kind of a contradiction. So he said that's like an example. Whereas we mentioned the scholars who we mentioned 5 conditions of Ibn Hajar about weak hadith that can be used for fada'il, for encouragement, and that's why he acted on the hadith man hafitha min ummati 40 hadithan. Whoever memorizes 40 hadith from my community, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will resurrect them. Zumratul fuqaha wal ulama. There's like different narrations. But then we also mentioned the opinion of Al-Hafiz al-Ghumari radiyallahu anhu, who said that this hadith about encouragement to study 40 hadith and know 40 hadith is hasan li ghayri. And he actually has a small essay on this where he took every narration about the virtues of knowing 40 hadith and all their asanid, because something that needs to be known is that this hadith, no one's considered it weak because of its text, its matan. So scholars acted on it. They considered it weak from which angle? From its sanad, from its text, its chain. So he took every chain that exists for this hadith and he wrote a book, and he went to every single rawi, every single narrator, and then he collected all of those chains, radiyallahu anhu, and he said all of these chains support each other. So we said that if there's hadith which are not extremely weak, and there's other conditions, there's no ilal in the matan, there's no weakness in the text, when you bring them all together, they can raise a weak hadith from what? From barakallahu feek. You can just put your finger in there, man. No, that's so much sweetness, you're just naturally sweet. Oh. So that's what the Egyptians would say. That all those hadith on there, barakallahu feek, man, thank you. when all the hadith are brought together, they raise it to what's called Hasan li ghayrihi. Okay? And that also would explain why a large number of traditional scholars acted on this hadith, because they considered it what? Hasan li ghayrihi, or da'if, but not super da'if. We explain what that meant. So you can watch the first one, inshallah. And then we explained the first hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Umar radiyallahu anhu. And I made a mistake as I was leaving last time. I told you when we have a hadith from Al-Bukhari where the Sahabi said, Sami'tu Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? That is the highest level of, it's correct. It's the highest level of authenticity. From Bukhari and Muslim, and the Sahabi said, I heard the Prophet say, I heard him say, is the strongest. The second is Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because maybe somebody told him, or maybe the Prophet wasn't speaking to him directly. So when a hadith is from Bukhari and Muslim, and the Sahabi says, Sami'tu Rasulullah, I heard the Prophet say, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yani tasrih bit tasmi', like they're making it clear they heard him. Then that means that, and this is what I forgot to tell you, that they're quoting him, this hadith bil ma'na, la bil lafz, that they're quoting him word for word, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then we went on to the second hadith. عن عمر رضي الله عنه وعنه قال عن عمر رضي الله عنه قال. So from Umar, who again, he said, بينما نحن جلوس عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذات يوم. So one of the problems of this manuscript and many of the manuscripts, and that's why you have to study with people, is that this manuscript, as well as the manuscript of Imam Nawawi radiyallahu anhu, has in it what's called Ziyadat al-Rawi, the addition of the narrator. It's not from the original statement of the Prophet ﷺ. It's allowed. It's a long discussion, about what's called ziyadat. So I gave some examples, like some of you who read Sahih al-Bukhari in the beginning, where it said the Prophet ﷺ was going to throw himself from a mountain. Maybe some of you read that, you're like, wow, like Prophet ﷺ was going to throw himself from a mountain, but وَأَسْمَةٌ كَسَائِرَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ وَاجِبَةٌ وَفَاضِلُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ Imam Marzuqi in his text, his poem Aqidat al-Awam, said that the prophets are like, they don't commit sins. So I remember a young Muslim emailed me, is suicide okay because Prophet ﷺ was going to throw himself from a mountain? So yeah, but he didn't, right? But that part of that text is not mentioned by Al-Hafiz in Fath al-Bari, because it's from the ziyarat of Ibn Shihab, ziyarat al-Zuhri. Imam al-Zuhri was the sheikh of Imam Malik, and Imam al-Zuhri was known for sometimes embellishing or trying to explain things to people, so he would add things to the narration, right? Meaning like his tafsir of the situation, or his tafsir of a word. So here, بينما نحن جلوس is not from the asl. So you should circle it. You should write next to it, Ziyaratul Rawi. That's why you study with teachers. One of the reasons. The real narration is بينما نحن عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذات يوم. Everybody understand? Don't get scared like, oh, hadith or... No, actually, these additions were an attempt to preserve the meaning of the sunnah, or the meaning of what the Sahaba experienced. Are we allowed to take rulings from those additions? What do you think? هل يجوز نستنبط أحكام من زيادات الراوي? Are we allowed to take rulings from like those things? What do you think? So one person said no. So there is a difference of opinion. There's a difference of opinion on that amongst the early Imams. بينما نحن جلوس عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذات يوم. So we said from this narration, we learn a number of things. Number one, the humility of our beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he used to hang out with the Sahaba. Like, he was humble. The da'i, you know, should be with the people. She should be with the people. I remember one of my teachers, I was invited with him somewhere, and you know, they were trying to treat him nicely, which is good, alhamdulillah. But then, like, they kept having him eat by himself, and he was like, no, I want to be with the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's not bad if maybe somebody's tired, taught all day, it's different. He was like, no, I want to be with the people. Number two, we said, ذات يوم. You know, something that people might not pay attention to, right? Because the Sahabi, he said, ذات يوم. Ismul Ishara. As if to say, that moment was a special moment. To have suhbah with Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Khair kathir. So it wasn't just like any normal day. It was a special day. Why? Because we're with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we should learn, like, any opportunity we have. MashaAllah, I was thinking about this when I woke up today at 5:30. I went to sleep at 2 o'clock. Is who else would you wake up for? Like, if you had 3 hours of sleep. Who else would you drive? We had sisters that drove all the way from Maryland. Because the suhbah with Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, they would value being with him. It's like a sharaf. Imam Ibn Hazm al-Andalusi, he said, 1 second with the Prophet ﷺ from the life of Sahabi is better than your entire life. Allahumma salli wa barak wa sallim alayhi. إذ طلع علينا رجل شديد بياض الثياب. إذ, you know, is a word. It's like suddenly, فجائية. Suddenly, طلع علينا. Somebody came to us. رجل, a man. شديد بياض الثياب. شديد بياض الثياب صفة. How did he look? He had extremely white clothing. شديد السواد الشعر لا يرى عليه أثر سفر. And his clothes were really white, and he didn't have any signs of travel on him. So he said, here we learn something, that the Prophet's community was a community that cared about each other. They noticed people they never saw before. You know, you could go in some masajids, mashallah, I've seen it here. This hasn't happened to me here, mashallah. Maybe I'm a little obvious too, but 6'5". But people could go into communities and live in communities for months. وَلَا أَحْدُ يُسَلِّمْ عَلَيْهِمْ. Nobody would even say salam to them. But here we see Umar, يَطَّلَعَ عَلَيْنَا رَجُلٌ. And not only is it like a new person, but I noticed how he looks. I noticed his clothes. Why do you think the Sahaba were concerned about people's clothing? What does that tell you about a person back then? They're poor, they have some needs. Is there something wrong with them? Is there anything I can do to help them? Khidmat Muslimin. So that's why Sadat al-Malikiyya, even though it's not a strong opinion, it's an interesting opinion about praying 2 rakat during the khutbah. We say waqul hurma. Like, you're not supposed to pray at that time, but the strong opinion is you should pray, 2 rakat before you sit down, as mentioned by Al-Qadi Abu Bakr, because Prophet said, As-salaytum la khala khalakum fasalir. Did you pray or not? No, stand and pray. Qala hadha nas. It's a clear text. But the Malikis have an interesting explanation of that hadith. When the man walks into the masjid during the khutbah, and the Prophet ﷺ says to him, did you pray? He said, no. What did he say to him to do? Stand and pray. The Malikis, they say the reason that the Prophet ﷺ asked him to stand and pray is because he was poor. And the Prophet knew that if his Sahaba, subhanAllah, look at the kind of community they were. If they saw someone who was poor, they would what? They would help him. So here we see that Umar radiallahu anhu, he's paying attention. to people that come into the community. And he notes how they look, because that might be an opportunity for him to what? To like help him, to alleviate some hardship. Because the Prophet said, whoever helps a believer or removes a hardship from a believer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove a hardship for them in the hereafter. So that's why the science of hadith is really a beautiful thing when you study it, because you learn about the character of the Sahaba. So I said to the people, the brothers and sisters a few days ago, like most of the hadith about major sins, the Sahaba never say the name of the person. Like zina, like rajulun, a man came, a woman came. Because, and there were only, there were not that many people in Medina, so everybody knew everybody. So they didn't say their names, because why? Like, they didn't want to slander them. Now, somebody makes a mistake in the khutbah, there's a blog post about it. There's like a new website about that person, where the companions of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, and that's why, know something. In kana Muhammad ﷺ bahran, if the Prophet is an ocean, then the drops of the ocean are the Sahaba. Each one is a drop of tarbiyah nabawiyah. So in each Sahabi you see one of the great, great, great qualities of our beloved Prophet ﷺ. In kana huwa amman fahum, if he was a universal, then there what's yukhassisu. In the sense each one of them is usually a specific aspect of the Prophet's character. فَإِنْ كَانَ مُطْلَقٍ, if he was universal, then there are aspects that in their lives they're the muqayyid for themselves, because it's impossible for anyone to be kal Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Understand that? So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when you study the Sahaba here, like this generosity of Umar, and this tells you about Umar, what made him great. You're seeing him secretly. This is how he is really. You're seeing his psychology, like, wow, Omar was this great leader and he was Jabbar, and no, but at the same time he cares about the person who comes to his community. He never saw him before. He's worried about them. That's why Abdullah ibn Mubarak, radiallahu anhu, the student of Abi Hanifa, when his classmates used to say, like, what's the difference between him and us? ما فرق بيننا وبينه in سير أعلام النبلاء, like, what's the difference between us and Abdullah ibn Mubarak? We're the same. Like, why do people love him? And then they said we traveled with him and there was a storm and we stopped in a cave. And suddenly, like, we couldn't find him anymore. And then, like, we started looking for him and we found him sitting down, he was crying. And we asked him, why are you crying? He said, this reminds me of our grave, like when we die. And they said, that's the difference between him and us. Right? So now you're seeing the sincerity of a community member of the Prophet ﷺ. Who's that community member? It's like somebody that no one knows. He's like, he has nothing to do. He's got a lot of free time on his hand. Or is it someone who's already extremely busy, has a million excuses? It's someone that's busy, has a million excuses. But he cares about people. That's what makes them different. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. Are the Muhajirin. The Ansar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَحْسِبُهُمُ الْجَاهِلُ أَغْنِيَا مِنَ التَّعَفُّفِ. The Muhajirin are those who came, you think they're rich because how they carry themselves even though they're poor. And the Ansar are those who welcome them. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ وَلَا يَجِدُونَ فِي صُدُورِهِمْ حَاجَةً. And they didn't find anything in their hearts negative towards their brothers and sisters for what they were given. So here we see Umar ibn Khattab, not only does he notice this new person, but he can describe him in detail. اطلع علينا رجل. خلاص. That's like enough, a person came. But then he says, شديد بياض الثياب. He had clean white clothes, extremely white. We also learn from this that most of the companions, their clothes weren't clean. Because that was something to pay attention to. Like, wow, someone had clean clothes on. Doesn't mean that they were dirty, as one of our teachers said. They were not dirty or poor by choice. They were dirty or poor, not dirty by providence. That's what asabahum. So he said, shadidu sawadi sha'r. His hair was really black. La yura alayhi atharu safar. And there were no signs of travel. وَلَا يَعْرِفُهُ مِنَّا أَحَدٌ. And none of us knew him. How did that last part happen? They said, white clothes, black hair, no signs of travel. And you know what? None of us knew him. So what happened? How would Umar know that? That none of us knew him? How? They talked. They cared about people as a community. Like, who's this new guy? And also they were concerned with the welfare of the Prophet ﷺ. So here you see, just from like 4 lines, man, how the community of the Prophet was structured. How they welcomed people, how they were concerned about people, and how they were invested in people. It wasn't just, because imagine, they could have been arrogant. This is Medina, man. There could have been like, who are you? Manant. But they weren't. Then he said, حتى جلس إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. And then he sat with the Prophet فأسند ركبتي إلى ركبتي وضع كفيه على فخذي. And then he put his knees next to the knees of the Prophet, put his hands on the thighs of the Prophet. Dr. Mustafa al-Imara, who's one of my teachers in Hadith, he said وضع كفيه على فخذي could have 2 meanings. Could mean that he put his hands on the thighs of the Prophet, or he put his hands on his own thighs. Most ulama said he put his hands on the thighs of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. SubhanAllah. Also, we learn from this hadith something I mentioned last time, that the angels, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent them to us. We believe la ya'sun Allah, like they don't disobey Allah. The hadith of Urwa ibn Zubair, the hadith of Amr ibn Abdul Aziz, akhara salata yawman, one day he delayed prayer. And then he mentions that Urwa ibn Zubair, he said to him, فأخبره أن جبريل نزل فصلى ثم صلى صلى الله عليه وسلم. This hadith about how Jibreel, the first hadith in the Muwatta actually of Yahya, when Jibreel taught the Prophet how to pray. Then after he finished, he said, كذلك أمرت. He said to the Prophet, I was ordered to do this. So that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what? He orders the angels to do things. And the angels don't what? Don't disobey. يعني وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا فسجدوا. Allah ordered them to make sujood. Immediately they made sujood. There's no delay. When Sayyidina Jibreel came to the Prophet ﷺ, there's really something. I actually went to Jeddah to talk to Sheikh Ibn Ubay about this one time. There's an interesting point here that people miss. Al-urfu muhkam. When Sayyidina Jibreel came to the Prophet ﷺ, how was he dressed?
Nice.
No, but what was he wearing? He was wearing the clothes of the people. Sahih Maulana. He was wearing the clothes of the Arabs. Why didn't he dress, in a different way? Why didn't he wear like a Shawar kameez or like a Robert Graham shirt? Why would he go to them dressed in something that they knew? So we learn from this that Jibreel is not only modeling for us the way to be a student, but also he's modeling for us the way to be a da'iyah. If you go to a people, if you're sent to a people, you should emulate them in their halal. You should emulate them in how they're dressed. Because Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, he said, rahimahullah, that for the Muslims who live amongst non-Muslims, it's encouraged for them to wear the clothing known to those people, at least outside in da'wah and so on and so forth, for 2 reasons. He said, number 1, qurba, to make people feel comfortable. Number 2, to protect yourself, not to draw attention to yourself. So Sayyidina Jibreel min bab al-tamthil, he comes to the companions of the Prophet ﷺ dressed like the Sahaba. So understand that Allah, who ordered him to dress that way? Allah subhanahu. شوف كذا حاجة جميلة دي. Like he takes on the culture of those Arabs. So we should think also like amongst the people in the halal, in da'wah, in our propagation, what more bil urfi. So he said with the Prophet ﷺ, Another riwayah, he came into the masjid of the Prophet, Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad. You know, he's speaking to him in a way which is like rude. In fact, what's the ruling on saying Ya Muhammad like that? Makruh. It's makruh. Right? But it's impossible for us to believe it's makruh. SubhanAllah. Because the malaika, they don't do anything that's makruh. So we understand that if there's, watch this, you have to pay attention. If there's a need to do something that's makruh, it became permissible. The qaida. So here, Angel Jibreel, is there a need to do that? Everybody understand? You know, if there's a need to do something that's disliked, it becomes what? Permissible. Depending on the need, it could even become wajib. But in general, mubah. For Sayyidina Jibreel, when he comes to the Prophet ﷺ, he needs to make a scene. Because why? He's going to what? It rhymes. He needs to make a scene so he can teach people there. Aywa, mashallah. You guys are smart. He needs to make a scene to teach people their deen. So, mashallah. So, Sayyidina Jibreel, when he comes, the riwayah of Imam Tirmidhi, Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad, to grab the attention of the people. So that means that the da'iyah, if there is a need sometimes, they can utilize the makruhat, they became permissible. Did you see that? هذا hadith bahr. It's ocean. SubhanAllah. Because we cannot believe that malaika will do makruhat. So we have ta'arud. And Imam Sidi Abdullah in Maraqisul wal Jam'u wajibul ma amkana. I want to keep it easy for you, sorry. Sometimes we get carried away. We enjoy our own monologues. For Jam'u wajibul ma amkana means like if you can make two contradicting texts work together, you have to. It's wajib. The Hanafis is not wajib. Malikis, the Shafis, and the Hanbalis, it's wajib. So here we have two contradicting texts. One is Jibreel saying, Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad. This is makruh to talk to the Prophet, something like that. What contradicts that is that angels don't what? Don't do any disobedience. So how, kayf tajma'? So how do you make both of those work? That in biwujud al-haja, in the face of a need, and this is in the Hanafi madhab too, alhamdulillah, the makruhat became permissible. Let me give you an example of that. You have acid reflux. Let's make it easy. Because most of our brothers and sisters, because of our diet, acid reflux, right? Too much achar, or, you know, we drink a lot of coffee or tea or whatever. We like a lot of spice. You know, after 1 year of conversion, my mother, she made a baked potato. I started pouring hot sauce on the baked potato. And she said, what do those Muslims do to you? Oh my God, hot sauce on baked potatoes? So it was a Desi community, man. I have no choice. But let's say that someone has some kind of illness that makes them sleep on their stomach. And the doctor says to them, you have to sleep on your stomach. First thing that's going to come to you is what? Sleeping on your stomach is what? Makruh. But from this hadith now you learned what? There is a need to sleep on your stomach. So it became what? Permissible or exactly. So that's why some of our scholars, they said this hadith, we took more than 1 million axioms from it. Yani 1 million is like embellishment, of course, right? But I mean, like, there's so many points of benefit that we took from this one narration of the Prophet ﷺ. So he said, Ya Muhammad, to grab the attention of the people. Also that means, and we believe that, you know, one of the qualities of the prophets is yajibu as-sidqa wal-amana. You know, we believe that one of the qualities of the prophets is kada fatana, it's intelligence. So the caller to Islam is creative, intelligent, smart. They utilize things to grab the attention of the people, you know, make them think. So here we see Sayyidina, Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad. Akhbirni an al-Islam. Tell me about Islam. You know, if we had more time, what we would do now is we'd study one madhab and ibadat, like the opinions of the fuqaha, because that's Islam here. But maybe you're going to say, why do you say La ilaha illallah? La ilaha is from Aqidah. Because in that time, you didn't have this definition of fiqh and Aqidah. That came later on. He said, فَأَخْبِرْنِي عَنْ Islam. Tell me about Islam. But what we said is important. That the Prophet ﷺ answers him in a very generalized fashion. Doesn't make it complicated. Once I was in a masjid, subhanallah, in America, and I was praying Asr. I came late. I was praying by myself. There was one brother, non-Muslim. While I was praying, I heard him say, like, I want to learn about Islam. So they set him down with a person who doesn't speak English. And there was a translator. And they said to him, this guy wants to learn about Islam. So it was really hard to keep concentration in prayer. As a convert, you hear somebody asking about Islam. So he said to him, what's his name? He said his name. He said, first thing, tell him he has to change his name. SubhanAllah. What's worse is the guy translated it. You would think that the guy, if somebody said, يَجِبْ عَلَيْهِ أَنْ يُغَيِّرْ اسْمَهُ, I'd have been like, so he says, welcome to the community. Right? You could at least changed what he was saying, right? But the individual was like, so the sheikh, and then the brother was like, what? The what? The what? He's like, sheikh. Yani sheikh. And he was like, no, but I understand what you're saying. Poor guy, right? He said, well, this teacher said you have to change your name. He was like, what? Like, yeah, you gotta change your name. Then he said to him, وَتَانِي, secondly, لَا يَجُوزُهُ أَكْلَ لُحُومِ بِالْمَحَالَاتِ كَزَيْءِ الْمَكْدَونَلْدْس. So he said, second, tell him, cannot eat meat in restaurants like McDonald's. The guy translates it. I was like, wallahi, at least make inhiraf or something, like tahrif of his words. Translate it. The third thing, I can't say it because we're in the masjid and there are women here. But just imagine, if you follow the religion of Ibrahim, you're supposed to do a certain thing. He said that to him. And he translated it. The guy got up and left, man. Before I could finish Asr, gone. And then I finished my salah. I sped up my salah, actually. He was gone. I went outside, he was gone. And I said to that guy, man, saddatta hada shakh an sabilillah. You kept him away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here, look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He keeps it very simple. فَأَخْبِرْنَا عَلَى الْإِسْلَامِ. He answers in a very simple way. قَالَ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. And that's why we say the first obligation upon people is to know, and remember this, to know Islam in a general way. In a general way, ijmali. Not tafsili. Think about it. Fiqh is the science of tafsilat. Like particulars and no. But the science of faith is ijmaliyat. So that's why Sheikh Muhammad al-Hassan Didu, from also Mauritania, our teacher, he memorized Sahih Sitta before he was 30. SubhanAllah. Sheikh, he said to us, when we were in Egypt, somebody asked him, what is an obligation for us to know? He said, the obligation for you to know is described like in Hadith Jibreel. But now, how do we teach people Iman? How do we teach them fiqh? It actually creates problems in our community. The companions of the Prophet ﷺ, when they learned this, they were enemies, they became brothers. كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمتي إخوانا. Now we are brothers. We learned this and we became what? وكنتم إخوانا فأصبحتم بعذابه أعداء. The opposite is happening. Family members won't like each other anymore. I belong to this special sheikh, you belong to a different special sheikh, or I follow this certain way, you follow this certain way. So that tells you there's something wrong. How we're teaching each other. Whereas it should strengthen us and make us more beloved to each other, more sacred to each other, more invested in each other, because of those universals. So the Prophet says, when he asked him, فَأَخْبِرْنِي عَنِ الْإِسْلَامِ, he said, أَن تَشْهَدْ أَلَّا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, to testify, لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ مُحَمَّدٌ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Somebody asked me, if somebody converts to Islam, do they have to take the Shahada in Arabic? What do you think? Why? They don't understand what they're saying. Right? So, in Boston, what we ask people to do is, we ask them to say the Shahada in English. There's no God except Allah, and Muhammad is his servant and messenger. And then I ask the person, after they've taken the Shahada, to make dua for everybody, immediately. Because they have no sins, subhanAllah. So their dua is accepted. It's kind of selfish. But then I'll ask them, like, how would you explain how you feel about Allah? So they say, like, Allah is my anchor. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is my anchor. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is my leader. Right? There's a sense of meaning in their heart that they share with us. So you can say, there's a good article written by Sheikh John Eder on my website about saying the Shahada in English. But Shahada in Arabic means what? To witness. When do people bear witness? When does it happen? Like, not asking a theological question. I'm asking a logical question.
Like in court.
Okay, in court. But why? Why do you bring a witness?
Because they were there. They saw it. They witnessed it.
Okay, so there's knowledge, ma'rifah. They experienced ru'ya. Good. So that means in order to make Shahada properly, I have to what? Barakallahu feek. Libya. Where's the Zamita?
I got it for you.
All right. So when somebody witnesses, they have to have what? Experience. Right? But why do you ask them? What situation does a judge or a lawyer ask someone to be a witness? When there's ghumud. That's why Ar-Raghib Isfahani said, there can only be shahada in the face of like a doubt, in the face of ambiguity. So in the ambiguity of this world, right? The cloudiness of this dunya, the Muslim says, La ilaha illallah. They testify to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to fitrah. So the Prophet said, An tashhad an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Why didn't he say wa annani Rasulullah? Why say wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah? It's a little interesting. Talk about it in the future. Wa tuqim as-salah, to establish as-salah. Wa tu'ti az-zakah, wa tusum Ramadan, wa tahujj al-bayt. So the Prophet explained to him the 5 pillars of Islam, right? Plus the Shahada. As if to say Miftahu al-Islam huwa Shahada la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Then after that, Salah, Zakah, fasting, Hajj, if you can do it. What's interesting here is if we're going to study this book, like really, if I lived here, we would stop here and read Ibn Ashir, or Akhdari, or Ashmawi, or Nul Idah. We would read like a whole book of fiqh, because that's Shahada la ilaha illallah. After that are aspects of ibadat. And he said, In istata'ta ilayhi sabila. We take a principle from that statement of Sayyidina Jibreel, of the Prophet ﷺ. If you can do it, you can make hajj, if you can do it. That we say orders are based on ability. I think the battery may be dying on the microphone, I don't know. Al-awamir, no, it's okay, I just think it's in and out. Al-awamir, mabniya ala istita'a. Orders are based on the ability of a person. What does that mean, istita'a? What does it mean, ability? Because when people hear that, like, oh wow, ability, so that means like if I can't pray, I don't have to pray, like I don't fast, I'm not going to fast, pizza looks good, like it's all good, whatever. La, ya Sheikh, that's not what he means. What he means is this. Have you ever seen that contest where someone goes in like Walmart, they give them an hour, like just put as much as you can in the cart? That's istita. Like that effort. If you were to go like, if someone said you can carry as much gold out of this vault as you can, hada istita. That's ability. Like you try your best. You put forth the best effort. He said, إن استطعت إليه سبيلا قال صدقت. He said, you spoke the truth. We learn from this, it's allowed for the teacher to affirm what the sheikh said. It's allowed for him to or her to interact with the sheikh. فعجبنا له أن يسأله ويصدقه. And then Umar said, we were shocked, that he did that. Again, Jibril's grabbing the attention of the people. قال فأخبرني عن الإيمان. Then tell me about faith. وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسوله واليوم الآخر وتؤمن بالقدر خيره وشره. Prophet said to believe in Allah إجمالا, and His angels, His books, His messengers, and to believe in the hereafter, and to believe in Al-Qadr, the good and the bad. But let me translate it exactly how it is, and I'm going to show you something really cool in Arabic, inshallah. Prophet said to believe in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the hereafter, and to believe. So when it comes to Qadr, the Prophet does what with the verb? He repeats it, because most people have a problem with Qadr. Narration say, أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسوله واليوم الآخر وقدره والقدر خيره وشره. He said, وتؤمن بالقدر خيره وشره. The other thing is the verb that's used. What type of verb is that? Mudari', right? Present, future. So it doesn't mean to believe once or twice. It means what? To believe your entire life. ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون, like وَعْبُرَ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيكَ الْيَقِينَ, like through your whole life believe in these things. If we were really studying this text properly, we'd stop here, we'd read a small treatise on Aqidah, like Aqidat al-Awam of Imam Marzuqi radiyallahu anhu, or some text like that. What's the best book to learn Aqidah from? What do you think? Left Ali. Quran. There's a great scholar, he recently died from Jordan, Al-Ashqar. Sulaiman Al-Ashqar. He was the teacher of Umar Sulaiman. Sulaiman Al-Ashqar radiyallahu anhu, he wrote a lot of books about creed, a lot of books about creed. And in his memoirs, he said something really beautiful. He said that the time in my life where I experienced the battle, not doubting, but I felt like I didn't have the sweetness of Iman, was when I was doing my PhD in theology. SubhanAllah, you would think like if you're doing a PhD in theology, your Iman would be through the roof. He's like, no, that was like the hardest time. Like in Egypt, when I was in the College of Sharia, it was the most spiritually draining time, because it's Sharia, haram, halal, disliked, Man, I need some Ghazali up in here, man. Like, sorry, I'm teaching. I really would enjoy if someone could share some of the wise words of Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, right? So he said like he went to his advisors in Riyadh, and Hafizahullah, and he went there and he was like, I have a problem. So they thought like with his research, he's a PhD student. He's like, no, my Iman is not strong. So they said to him like, what's your specialty? He's like, theology. How could your Iman be weak if you're doing theology? So he kept asking them like, what should I do? 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 What book should I read? What book should I read? Should I read this book? Should I read that book? And then he said, I came across a statement of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah. That Imam Ibn Taymiyyah said, if you want to taste the sweetness of Iman, alayka bil Quran. Like if you want to taste the sweetness of Iman, go to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What was the text of Aqidah for the Sahaba? Tahawiyah? Aqidat al-Awam? Those are important books for learning the rules of Aqidah. But the sweetness of faith is found like Surah Al-An'am. وَإِن يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِدُرٍّ فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهُ إِلَّا. SubhanAllah, you know, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala afflicts you, nothing can stop it. وَيَمْسَسْكَ بِخَيْرٍ فَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. And if good touches you, He's in control of all things. وَهُوَ قَاهِرُ فَوْقَ عِبَادِهِ. La ilaha illallah. So like the Quran, right, touches you. I'll give you an example of that. In Surah Al Imran, when Sayyidina Zakaria, he cannot have children. He comes to Sayyidah Maryam, and he sees that she has kids. هنالك دعا زكريا ربه. Zakaria Rabba, sorry. No, Sayyidina Zakaria makes dua. Oh Allah, give me kids. After she said to what? هو من عند الله. إن الله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب. هنالك means like pang. You know, when you read it in Arabic, it's like, if you see the story, you're like, wow, that was weird. Because it's like right in front of her. رَبِّي هَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ ذُرِّيَّةً طَيِّبَةً. Like that's how you feel it. It means, although it doesn't mean that, but that's how you feel. هنالك يعني على طول in Egyptian. Like مباشرة دعا ربه. So immediately he did it. Why? Because he realized, because we believe that Maryam, when she was in khalwa ma Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used to give her like fruits out of season, right? So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her fruits out of season, pay attention, Zakaria realized he can give my wife a baby out of season. Allah. That's how the Quran teaches Aqidah. Like that's how it touches us. So here, traditionally, you know, we would read a book on Aqidah, but I always tell people every day you need to read a book on Aqidah is Al-Fatiha. The end of Surah Al-Baqarah, you know, the Prophet said that's a treasure from Jannah. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Surah Al-Rahman, Surah Al-An'am, Yasin, you know, mashallah. So he said, Sadaqt, he spoke the truth. قال فأخبرني عن إحسان. Tell me about Ihsan. Al-Ihsan. These are the three core sciences of our religion that all of you should constantly, and I should constantly be improving our literacy of, so we can practice better, so we can live better lives. Islam, Iman, Ihsan. Islam, Iman, Ihsan. It's like, you know, when you go to the gym, it's your core workout. This is your core workout. Every day. You do deadlifts, don't do deadlifts every day. But every day you do something in your core. Every day, as a Muslim, on my own, I should make sure that I strengthen these things. There are different words for these things, right? Islam, fiqh. Iman, what's another word for it? Aqidah. Ihsan, tasawwuf. Some people get upset. Why do you call it this? This is a bid'ah. Don't call it this. Don't call it that. That's wrong. Because the ulama la mushahata bistirah. Right? There's no arguing about what you call something. You should know that axiom. The scholars, there's a beautiful axiom. There's no argument about names of things. You can call it what you want. Call it a car. Call it a vehicle. Call it a means of moving. I don't care what you call it. Because the concern, al-ibratu bil-ma'ani laysa bil-asma'. This is an axiom. We don't care about the name. We care about the what? The meaning of it. So ihsan. What's ihsan? أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. To worship Allah as though you see Him. Even though you can't see Him, you know He sees you. So that core foundation is something that always I have to be seeking to improve and learn about. Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. And we're going to hurry, sorry. Only 2 hadith. قال فأخبرني عن الساعة. Tell me about as-sa'ah, the hour. Let me ask you a question. Pay attention. Didn't he already ask about that? Didn't he already ask about that? Like, kind of? Implicitly? How did he already ask about that? But when? What did he say? Iman. Tell me about Iman. The Prophet said, Wal yawmil akhir. So here we learn that the student, if they need clarification, they should ask a question. قال فأخبرني عن الساعة. And also when we say yawm akhir, that means everything from the moment we die till like eternity, right? So asking about the hour is a specific event that's going to happen when? In Yawm al-Akhir. Atf khas ala am. As though he's saying, look, I want to know about this because it's super important. Tell me about the hour. فأخبرني عن الساعة. The Prophet ﷺ said to him what? قال ما المسؤول عنها بأعلم من السائل. The one being asked doesn't know more than the one who's asking. قال فأخبرني عن أماراتها. Tell me about its signs. أماراتها. قال أن تلد الأمة ربتها. You know, most ulama said that it means that children are going to treat their moms like slaves. And now you see that. You go to Target. Mom! Bring me the toy! Okay, baby. It's incredible. وأن ترى حفاة العراة العالى رياء أشياء يتطاولون في البنيان. We talked about how you'll see the poor, naked Bedouins competing in building large buildings. We mentioned last week, Sheikh Muhammad Wissam was my teacher in Fatwa. And we used to read the Muwatta every day in front of the grave of Sayyidina Hussein. Masjid Sayyidina Hussein. And Wallah ana uhib Sheikh Muhammad. And we used to read the Shama'il, you know, every day after Fajr. So we were reading in the Muwatta, you know, the Hadith to talk about alamat as-sa'ah, importance of the hour, signs of the hour. And he said Sheikh Muhammad was like a great scholar of usul. I benefited a lot from him, how to read texts. The way he reads text is incredible, because he always like takes these really cool usuli principles and like makes the text alive. Here's this example. So I was reading the Muwatta to him, and then we came to a hadith. Unfortunately, I forgot the hadith. Tells you like I'm not a good rawi. But he said to me, stop. He said, is it allowed to make istinbat al-ahkam bi-alamat as-sa'ah? Is it allowed to read like the hadith and stuff that talk about the end of time? Can you make rulings from that? For example, he said, Tatwilu bunyan, Burj Dubaida. He's like, you know, now they're building like big buildings in the Arabian Peninsula. Could someone take this hadith and say, La yajuzu lakum, it's not allowed to build tall buildings because we want to live longer, right? Or vice versa. He said, no. Then he mentioned this axiom. You should write this axiom down. You need to know it. That it's not allowed to take rulings from the signs of the hour that the Prophet talked about until they happen. Because if people act on them before they happen, that's like cults, like Jim Jones, you know. Now you have certain really extreme evangelical groups who are trying to do things in Palestine to bring Christ back. Remember in Mecca about 30 or 40 years ago, those people, when they captured the Haram, they said, this guy, his name is Muhammad ibn Abdullah, he's the Mahdi, we have to do like these things. So, no. He said no. And he said because the ahkam deal with the af'al. Like rulings deal with things happening right now. And if you get too caught up in those kind of things, you can hurt people, you can harm them. And people will start living for like things that aren't tangible. You understand? Like cults. Remember like 13 years ago in California, those people with the Ben & Jerry's Rocky Road, and they still killed themselves? I was like, how could you kill yourself with Rocky Road in the fridge? Like, at least take out the Rocky Road first. And they had like nice Nikes on and stuff, right? Because they were trying to catch a comet, right? That's dangerous. And people are suspect to that. We might laugh about it, but I've seen, even traveling in the Muslim world, every once in a while you see people go to jail, right? Because there's some sheikh, some leader of theirs said like, if we do this, this will happen because the Prophet said this is going to happen, so we got to like make it happen. The sheikh was like, La yajuzu hadha. That's not allowed, because you're going to hurt people. And Islam came to protect people from harm. ثُمَّ انطَلَقَ فَلَبِثْتُ مَلِيًّا. Here you see the discipline of Sayyidina Umar. Yeah.
mentioned that you're not allowed to take ruling from it unless the thing happens. So once the thing has happened, do you make a ruling from it then? Or?
Yeah, it will be up to the ulama. Of course, why? Good question. He said, so you're saying it has to happen before a ruling can come. Why? Because then it impacts people's lives.
So you can take, for example, now, Buddhist Khalifa, that's the tallest building. Saudi is not going to make a competitive building to that. How would you take part in that ruling?
So here we would tell people, this is from the signs of the hour. Improve your life. Go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Worry about building your Iman more than the buildings. Yes, ma'am.
Also, it's presumptuous because you're trying to put yourself in the place of Allah and making others.
Exactly. And you're asking, that's a very beautiful point you made. MashaAllah. Thank you, sister. That you're trying to determine the unseen. وَأَنْدَهُ مَفَاتِحُ الْغَيْبِ لَا يَعْلَمُهُ. No. But Allah is the only one who knows the unseen. And that's why when people get into the unattainable, the presumptuous things, that leads to that kind of cult of personality. There's no way to really know, so it's better to leave it. Understand? Thank you for sharing. ثم انطلق. Then he left. فَبَلِثْتُ مَلِيًّا. فَلَبِثْتُ مَلِيًّا means I sat for a while, like very disciplined. One of the narrations of this hadith in Tirmidhi, thank you, is that they ran outside and they couldn't find any footprints. After the Prophet told them what? The Prophet said, Ya Umar. Imagine Umar, he was quiet for a long time. Patience of the student. And some ulama said something, I mentioned it last time here. Like if you want to see the tafdeel of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the virtues of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who stopped asking questions? Like who stopped this from happening? Like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't say like, هذا فراق بيني وبينك. Stop asking questions. But he just let him keep asking. So they said, you have to be patient with people. They keep asking questions. Keep asking. Don't stop them. Whereas Sayyidina Khidr, he did what with Sayyidina Musa? هذا فراق بيني. So he said, if you want to know the virtues of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam never cut off someone asking questions. ثم he said فانطلق ثم فلبثت مليا ثم قال يا عمر أتدري من السائل. He said, Ya Umar, do you know who the student? He said, why didn't he say أتدري من الطالب? He said أتدري من سائل مجاز, actually. Because is the only thing Jibril asked questions? Is that the only thing he did? But the most important thing he did was what? So he calls him a questioner. So some of our teachers used to say to us, we learn from this hadith that the most important character trait of a student is to ask questions. The Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Dhar, to ask a question solves all the problems. Unfortunately, in our communities, like people will come to us, I'm sorry, I don't want to ask a question. They'll send you a text on Facebook, I'm so sorry, comma. Why are you sorry for asking? Like, how can we create a community that's scared to ask questions, man? When that question is a form of ibadah. So, the Prophet ﷺ, when he describes Sayyidina Jibreel, he calls him Sa'il. He's the questioner. As though that's the most important thing. And also, it's alif lam al-mu'arraf. Ismu yu'inu musamma mutlaqa alamahu ka Ja'far wa khirniqa. Kama qala ibn Malik. He said, he said alif and lam here. As-sa'il. The questioner. Because everybody knew who the questioner was. As though that's the thing he did the most. He's known for it now. And he said, فَإِنَّهُ Jibreel. He said that was Jibreel. And look at the answer of Omar. He didn't say, well, ممكن فلان ibn فلان من بني فلان. Like maybe it's this guy from this tribe. I think it was, maybe it's this guy. Well, no, maybe it's this guy. He's like, Allahu wa rasuluhu a'lam. I don't know. Wallahi, I learned more from my teachers when I said I don't know than when I gave an opinion. SubhanAllah. Because then they answer you. Like, I don't know. Then the floodgates open. One time I did it with Sheikh Imad Affat rahimahullah. He was the sheikh who was killed in the Thawra in Egypt. SubhanAllah. This is our teacher. Sheikh Imad Ifat, he used to sit in front of me in Dar Ifta. Kashams. You know, he's like a sun, man. Imama, Mu'addib, Qira'at, Fiqh, everything. So one time I was sitting with him, rahimahullah. He asked me a question about Hajj. I said, I don't know. He said, how can you not know that? I said, no, I just want to hear your answer. I just want to hear your answer. He's like, okay, but if you knew, what would you say? I would say, I don't know. Rahimahullah. May Allah help his wife and his kids, you know. قلت الله ورسوله أعلم. Allah and his messenger know best. قال فإنه جبريل. فإنه جبريل. Inna is used in Arabic to emphasize when you think people don't believe you. Called talabiyya, jumla talabiyya in rhetoric. So, like now I was late. So someone's like, Suhaib's here, like, oh yeah, whatever. La inna Suhaib ja. Inna. That means like, get it together. Qad hadar. So why would the Prophet say to them, فَإِنَّهُ Jibreel? Do the companions have any doubts? No, it's to make them feel good, man. It's to raise their spirits. Jibreel was here. فَإِنَّهُ Jibreel. And also to show them, Jibreel is something incredible. أَتَاكُمْ يُعَلِّمَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ. He came to teach you. Here we mentioned something last time that's really awesome about this hadith. Inshallah, then we'll move on to a new hadith. And that is that what's profound about this beautiful hadith, out of all things we mentioned, is that the student is the teacher and the teacher is the student. They change roles like very smoothly. There's a moment where you feel like the Prophet is the student, then the Prophet's the teacher. Jibreel is the student, then Jibreel becomes the teacher. So we learn here that this relationship between teacher and student is reciprocal. It's a reciprocal process. And that's why in Boston, and here I see that with Imam Majid, Hafizahullah, Sheikh Abdul Rafi, Hafizahullah, is that Imam learns and teaches. And you learn and you teach. We share in this process, a learning masjid. حبيبنا الحديث الثالث عن أبي عبد الرحمن عبد الله بن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنهما قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول بني الإسلام على 5 شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وحج البيت والصوم رمضان رواه البخاري ومسلم. From the father of Abd al-Rahman, Abdullah, the son of Umar, Khattab. You know, one of my teachers, we used to read hadith with him. When he would come across the name Abdullah ibn Umar, he would stop. And he'd say, Wallahi, I love this person. Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda from Syria. When he used to say, Qala Rasulullah, he started to cry. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. From Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say, that means he's going to what now? Hadith, bilafth or bima'na? Bilafth. He's going to quote it. Good, yeah, good, mashallah. He's going to quote the Prophet. Bunya al-Islamu, bunya fu'ila. Bunya. Islam was built. This form, bunya, the passive form. Ism alladhi lam yusamma fa'ilu. You know, actually it's better not to say majhul. I heard someone say majhul. You know, majhul means the passive form, unknown. Imam Ibn Hisham. This is like for people that are strong students, right? I'm just a simple person, but I heard this from my teacher. It's nice. He said, you know, you shouldn't say ism majhul because that means it's majhul also to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But nothing is majhul to Allah, a'udhu billah. So it's better to say ism alladhi lam yusamma fa'ilu. As Imam Ibn Ajrum and Al-Ajrumiyya mentioned. In Al-Ajrumiyya. And Ibn Hisham. If you don't understand what that means, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. That's for people who understand. But the point is, he's saying instead of saying something, instead of saying passive, a verb, they say it's unknown. The subject is unknown. But in reality, no subject is unknown to who? Exactly. So I say, don't say unknown. But say the noun, who, or verb, whose subject is not mentioned. Lam yusamma fa'iluhu. Qala bunya. So why is this used, this passive form in Arabic sometimes? Islam was built to show the builder is awesome. What's called in Arabic tashwiq as-sam', to get the listener like, huh? Who built it? Who built it? If I say to my son, someone brought a gift. Who? That's the form here. So number one is to create an interest in the listener, like, I want to know, man bana hadha deen? Man bana? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's like, who built it? Allah. Oh, subhanallah. So number one is to create tashwiq as-sam'. Tashwiq means what? Like to entice the listener. Number two is to show the subject is amazing. Ta'zim al-fa'il. Like, who did it? Something awesome. Number three, to shame something. Like, it's not worth mentioning. Like, zuyyina linasi hubbu shahawati min an-nisa. Allah said, someone beautified the dunya. Who's that someone? La. Shaitan, yani. Zayyana ash-shaitan. No, it's okay, don't worry. It's no problem. At least you're answering, alhamdulillah. I had a Sheikh Sa'aduddin Hilali, in fatwa. We had one Russian classmate. He was awesome, man. Cool guy. He had like 6% body fat. Russians, man. He had like veins in his ears, man. I was like, man. And he ate whatever he wanted. I used to get mad at him. I made a lot of hasid on him, man. I was like, man. Anyways, a lot of nazar. So the Sheikh was like, who can answer this question according to the Hanafi madhab? So he would always answer the wrong things. Every time it was the wrong answer. So after a while we're like, Wallahi ta'abti ya akhi da'iman yukhti. So he raises his hand and we're like, Ya Allah. Here we go again. It's like, it feels like kind of like Hogwarts, man. Like small little wood rooms and no one knows where you are and you're mufti training and there's this guy like Ron who keeps getting the answer wrong. But his name is, Russian name. So he said something like acutely insane. I forgot the question. And we started laughing. We're not supposed to laugh, so we're trying not to laugh. Our little Ezra hats are shaking and stuff. And then Sheikh, he said, MashaAllah. This is the best wrong answer I've ever heard. He was like, you know what? If I was going to be wrong, that would be my answer. He encourages him. Like, it's good. He didn't censor him for being wrong. He encouraged him for being wrong. Like, we don't do that. We get mad, people get right. So Sheikh was like, MashaAllah, iftah alayk. And kunta ala al-khata, fadi afdal khata shahidta bi'ayn. It's like the best khata I ever saw. Right? So, don't worry, akhi al-habib. Bunya al-Islamu. Islam was built ala khamsin. Why didn't you say al-khams, if you understand Arabic? Why didn't you say Islam was built on the five? Why did it say, if you're literally going to translate it, how would you translate it? Nakiratun qabilu mu'athira awaqi'un. As mentioned by Ibn Malik in his Alfiya. Alfiya is a poem we had to learn. It's 1,000 lines about Arabic grammar. It's really cool. He wrote it for his son. So, why does he say Islam is built on a five, not the five? Why? Good, mashallah. I don't have a sweet. Right? In Boston, I keep sweets with me, but organic, grass-fed. So, free range candy. Yeah. So sometimes he used the indefinite article, not the definite article, to show something is so awesome, it can't be defined. So that's why when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, Ar-Rahmata lil-Alameen, or Rahmatan, because you can't define the Prophet's Rahmah. You can't limit the Rahmah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. فهنا also khamsin, it means these five things are incredible. They cannot be defined. What does he mean by that? And their benefit to you. How they can help you. You might not catch it in English. I don't know how to translate it. My Arabic is better than my English. Sorry. My English is very Oklahoma. Islam's built on five things. Like, that's how I understand it. Right? But Arabic, I understand what it means. Yeah.
So, is the indefinite article?
Da is the alif lam is the definite. You define it. The man, you've restricted him. But when you say a man, it could be any man. So any five, rhetorically, in rhetoric it means like, you can't define how awesome these five are, so you don't use the alif and lam. You don't restrict them. Just like the rahmah of the Prophet ﷺ, it has no limit, so it's described as an indefinite rahmah. See that? It's really cool. That's what you study in rhetoric in Arabic. It's very nice. Yeah?
It's more wide. It says rahmah is different between ar-rahmah. It means like it's limited.
لا نهاية لها. لا تحدد. Exactly. So in Arabic you get it. Ding. أنت من فين يا؟
من سوريا.
أهلا وسهلا. يسلموا إن شاء الله. But we need some Syrian sweets. So you can't limit those five. They're so great. They have no limit. Got it? Then he uses what's called badal. Ba'di min al-kull. So because listen, if you really read this properly in Arabic, buniya al-islamu ala khams. What are those khams? Because why? It's ambiguous. So you want to, what are those five? What are they? The listener, and here we learn the da'iyah, the person who calls to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to have swagger, man. Has to have some flavor. Can't just like, oh, you know, Islam is one and God is one and we pray 5 times and hey, become Muslim. It's really cool. Promise, swear to God. It's awesome. It's not how it's going to work, man. Right? So the Prophet, look at his language. Ana afsahul Arab, said, I am the most, eloquent of the Arabs. So he said, Buniya al-Islamu ala khamsin. Islam is built on 5. The listener is going to say what? What are those 5? Shahadati. So that's the understanding how he uses the language here, to grab the listener. So when we do like youth programs, and they do things that are different, like spend the night in the masjid, PlayStation, whatever. Sisters, they do like all kind of cool stuff to bring people. All that is from the sunnah of the Prophet, using things to grab people's attention, pulling them in. Those of you from India like shakwa and jawab al-shakwa, right? When Alam Iqbal wrote shakwa, what happened? People called him a kafir. He wrote this poem called The Complaint. It's like somebody complaining to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When that poem first came out, what happened? People got upset, oh, astaghfirullah, how can you complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Then he wrote what? Jawab, the answer to the shakwa. So why did he do it? To grab people's attention. To grab their attention. And jawab al-shakwa, yes, I have in Arabic, subhanallah. It's like, you complain? It's the answer from Allah. You complain? Look what you did to this deen. So here the Prophet says, Buniya al-Islamu ala khamsin. Islam was built on 5. Is ambiguity. Who built it? So the listener, man bana hadha deen. Or man bana hadha Islam. Like it's going to grab them. Ala khamsin also is going to grab them. So here, see, the Prophet is what, man? He's a great orator. That's one of the things we learn when we study Hadith. He is invested in grabbing people's attention. He cares about people, so he uses language that creates ambiguity, because those of you who study education, Piaget, cognitive dissonance, when people feel a sense of imbalance, what do they try to do? Their fitrah makes them what? Seek to be balanced. So the Prophet uses these ambiguous terms. Islam was built, who built it? On 5. What are the 5? So then he says, Shahadati, majroor bil badaliyya. Shahadati means one of those 5 is shahada. خلاص شهادتي أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله. Some stuff if I'm saying it, you might say like, I don't know this, man. I don't know this. Good. To encourage you to learn. Don't say, oh, it's hard. Oh my gosh, I don't get it. No, don't be a wimp. Right? Don't be, oh. No, man. Like, don't lose your man card or your woman card in the dars. One time I was teaching a class for one of the institutions, Al-Maghrib, long time ago, in Washington, D.C. And there's a girl came to me, she's like, this is really hard, like, I don't know any of this. I said, did you take a class so you can learn what you already know? Like, why would you take a class to learn what you already know? Like, that doesn't make sense. So this is called badal. Where shahadati means that shahada is part of that 5, 1/5. So And why would he list them like this? So, wow, subhanAllah, those are the 5. It's like a mystery. Shahadati an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah wa iqam as-salah wa ita' az-zakah wa hajj al-bayt wa sallallahu. So he said shahada, to say la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah wa anna Muhammad, that there's no God except Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Iqama is the masdar. Iqam as-salah. So that means like salah is a process, man. It's a great thing. You have to establish it. The establishment of salah. Wa hajj al-bayt, to make hajj to al-bayt. Wa sawmi Ramadan, to fast the month of Ramadan. Rawah al-Bukhari wa Muslim. Why do you think, pay attention, Imam Nawawi is a scholar of usul al-fiqh. We said An-Nawa is from where? Syria. Hafizah Allah. And I mentioned his story in Egypt, when I was in Egypt, the wonderful police force there. Incredible. I think they won one of those J.B. Powers Award for like best policeman. You know, I had some classmates that got arrested. And the reason they were arrested is they had a book by Imam Nawawi. We said An-Nawa in Arabic means what? Nuclear. So they were like, these are nuclear terrorists who are reading a book by the nuclear Imam. حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. جهل مركب يعني. But in here, إقام الصلاة, to establish the salah means عملية. It's like a big deal. وتصوم رمضان, إيتاء الزكاة, the same thing, to give zakat. But why do you think he mentions this? Imam Nawawi is usuli. Why do you think he mentions this hadith after the hadith is revealed? Didn't he already mention all this stuff? Why is he mentioning it now in isolation? To show you it's what? Its importance. So it's though out of all of the things that I just mentioned in this hadith, if you want to live Islam right, because the first question was about what? Islam, then this is Islam. Work on this. You see that? That's why some of our scholars used to say to us, if you're able to study the books of hadith and understand the wisdom behind why they set the order of certain hadith, you're going to understand a lot of stuff. Like Imam Bukhari, they say his madhab is in how he established, like how he ordered the hadith. The next hadith, عن أبي عبد الرحمن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال حدثنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو الصادق المصدوق. So from Abu Abdurrahman, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud became Muslim when he was very young in Mecca. قال حدثنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, we heard from the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Prophet informed us صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم وهو الصادق المصدوق. He's the most truthful person. إن أحدكم يجمع خلقه في بطنه 40 يوما نطفة. The word yawman is a ziyada. Circle it. 40 نطفة. Ziyadatul Rawi. There's books written by the scholars of hadith just on ziyadat. ثم يكون علاقة مثل ذلك ثم يكون مضغة مثل ذلك ثم يرسل إليه الملك فينفخ فيه الروح ويؤمر ب4 كلمات بكتب رزقه وأجله وعمله وشقي أو سعيد. اللهم اجعلنا من السعداء. فوالله الذي لا إله إلا هو أو فوالله الذي لا إله غيره إن أحدكم لا يعمل بعمل أهل الجنة حتى ما يكون بينه وبينها إلا ذراع فيسبق عليه الكتاب فيعمل بعمل أهل النار فيدخلها وإن أحدكم لا يعمل بعمل أهل النار حتى ما يكون بينه وبينها إلا ذراع فيسبق عليه الكتاب فيعمل بعمل أهل الجنة فيدخلها. رواه البخاري ومسلم. My teacher used to read this hadith and start crying. Sheikh Ahmed Dia of Senegal, when we used to read this hadith, he used to cry. from Abdullah bin Mas'ud. His name was Abu Abdurrahman. That was his kunya. His son's Abdurrahman. Qala, said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say. Let me ask you a question. What's this hadith? Watch the wisdom of Nawawi. If you understand the wisdom of Nawawi, it's like watching LeBron impose himself on people. No, what I'm trying to say is it's art. Right? What was the first hadith? What was the hadith we just read about? Right before this was about what? What's what? Islam. Because the first question of Jibril was what? What's the second question of Jibril? What's the most difficult part of Iman? What's this hadith about? Now you see the wisdom of Nawawi. You want me to explain it to everybody so you can hang out with us a little bit? The first question that Sayyidina Jibril asked the Prophet was about Islam. The first hadith that comes after that hadith is about what? Islam. As though he's building on that explanation. The second question Sayyidina Jibril asked the Prophet about was what? Iman. So now what's the most difficult part of Iman? So he brings a hadith that explains Al-Qadr. See that? And you're going to see this happen over and over again. Because he said, what's the goal of this book? Who remembers from last hour? Like, I've been in DC a lot, like 3 days ago. What's the goal of the book? We said it. To make you what? Salihan, muslihan. Remember that. The goal of this book, the reason he wrote this, is to make you salih binafsik, muslih li ghayrik. That you're good in yourself and you're good to others. Because the best type of water in fiqh is what? Tahir, mutahir. Water that's clean and purifying. So the best type of Muslim is the one who's good at an internal level and beneficial to others. So he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, verily the creation of each one of you is brought together in his mother's belly for 40 days. Take out days. It's for 40 days is an addition of a narrator. Ziyadatul Rawi. In the form of a seed, then he is a clot of blood for a like period, then a morsel of flesh for a like period, then there is sent to him the angel who blows who blows into that person the breath of life. So how many, what would it be? Like 120 total. If you take the narration of days with it. Even though it's Ziyadatul Rawi. Actually, you know what? Nutfa. Let me check what's the ziyada. No.
Sheikh Ahmed Saad al-Asghari, he said Nutfa was the ziyada.
Nutfa is the ziyada now. Sheikh Ahmed Saad al-Azhari memorized Riyadh Salihin in 2 weeks. We have some ijazat from some shuyukh. Yeah, Nutfa is the ziyada. إن أحدكم يجمع في خلقه إن أحدكم يجمع خلقه في بطن أمه 40 يوما. Nutfa is the ziyada, is the addition. Let me explain something about this hadith. This hadith means that before you become a human being, how many days is it then? Like before you become officially alive. That's why the majority of ulama said abortion is allowed before 120 days. Except the Malikis. Except the Malikis. Yeah.
At what point would the soul be considered like in the body?
120 days. So Sadat al-Hanafiyya, Sadat al-Hanabila, or Sadat al-Shafi'iyya, they allow ijhad, abortion, for a need or necessity up to 120 days. The Malikis say it's not allowed at all. Based on this hadith. Where's our discourse about this? Where's our article on the Huffington Post? Where's our, we're balanced, man, on this issue. Between two different extremes. Right? Based on this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And that ruling that I just mentioned to you is old. This is the old books. I remember when I studied it, I was like, ijhad, I wonder 1980s, 1970s. It's like, qala, Abi Zayd. Qala Abu Zayd, what? Abu Zayd? Abu Zayd is the 6th century. Based on this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. The Malikis, the reason that they don't allow abortion at all is because they said in their time period, medicine was min al-dhunniyat, bab al-dhunun. So you weren't really sure what was going on. But now that's changed. And the fatwa changes according to time, place, people, and even scientific information. Based on this hadith. فَإِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ يُجْمَعُ خَلْقُهُ فِي بَطْنِ أُمِّهِ 40 يَوْمًا بِدُونِ نُطْفَةٍ ثُمَّ يَكُونُ عَلَقَةً مِثْلَ ذَلِكَ ثُمَّ يَكُونُ مُضْغَةً مِثْلَ. Then the person becomes an alaqa. The word alaqa is, a clot like a leech that takes blood. ثُمَّ يَكُونُ مُضْغَةً. Mudgha is like gum when you chew it. You know how it looks? That's mudgha. مثل ذلك. ثُمَّ يُرْسَلُ إِلَيْهِ. يُرْسَلُ, again, the passive verb. It didn't say ثُمَّ أَرْسَلَهُ اللَّهُ or أَرْسَلَ اللَّهُ or يُرْسِلُ اللَّهَ. It's what? ثُمَّ يُرْسَلُ. Why is it the passive? To show this is a great thing. ثُمَّ يُرْسَلُ إِلَيْهِ الْمَلَكُ فَيَنْفُخُ فِيهِ الرُّوحِ. Then the angel breathes life into that person. وَيُؤْمَرُ بِأَرْبَعِ كَلِمَاتٍ. And is ordered with 4 things. بِكَتْبِ رِزْقِهِ. The provisions of the person. وَأَجَلِ, their lifespan. وَعَمَلِ, and their actions. وَشَقِيٌّ أَوْ سَعِيدٌ, whether they'll be happy or unhappy. قدر, قضاء. فَوَاللَّهِ, then Abdullah ibn said, فَوَاللَّهِ, or the Prophet says, فَوَاللَّهِ الَّذِي لَا إِلَهَ غَيْرُهُ. Indeed, some of you, or some people will act the actions of the people of Jannah. What are the actions of the people of Jannah? If we had time, we'd talk about it. Until what has been decreed overcomes them and they act, there's the distance between them and paradise is a hand's distance. Qareeb min Jannah. And suddenly they begin to act like the people of hellfire and they enter into hellfire. There are some people that are going to act with the actions of the people of hellfire. Also, they have actions like riyah, showing off, insincerity, hypocrisy, until there comes between them an arm's distance, meaning close, qurba, dira'a. And then what's decreed overtakes them and they start to act like the people of Jannah and they enter it. Allahumma ja'alna min ahli Jannah. This hadith is talking about al-qada and how no one can escape the qada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, as my teacher used to tell me, this hadith is encouraging us to constantly stay obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Istiqama ala ta'atillah. Number 2, for the sinner, this hadith encourages us to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Always to make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next hadith, I'm going to hurry inshallah. Al-hadith al-khamis. Are you guys okay? عن أم المؤمنين أم عبد الله عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. ورواه البخاري ومسلم وفي رواية لمسلم من عمل عمل ليس عليه أمرنا فهو رد. This hadith is from Aisha. Did Aisha have any children? So why do they call her Umm al-Mu'mineen? So one opinion is, the strong opinion is that they're the mothers of believers. وَأَزْوَاجُهُ أُمَّهَاتُهُمْ. Sorry, I'm sleepy. Why they call her Abdillah? She didn't have any kids. Why is she called Abdillah? Because we're all Ibadullah? No, but that's good. That's the wrong answer I would have said. That's the best wrong answer, man. Good. Why is she Abdillah? Just think about it. There's 2 opinions. The first opinion is, what was the name of her nephew? Abdullah ibn Zubair. So, like, she took on that kunya. The second opinion is that people gave her this name because they knew she would never be a mother, man. They cared about her. Like, they wanted her to feel like you have a son, man. Even though you never had a son. So either way, whether she took the kunya of her nephew or people just called her Abdillah, because they loved her, man. They wanted her to feel part of the community. Imagine, she was like 19, 18. Some opinions said she was 28 when the Prophet died. So she spent like a lot of her life without a child, man. Also, women, we learn from this that the Sahabiyat, they valued children. It was like a good thing. So they gave her this name. The third opinion, there's 3 opinions, I was wrong too, is that she had a miscarriage. And the baby's name was Abdullah, but it's a weak opinion. It's weak, it's not strong. From the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because it's not a strong opinion. She said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man ahdatha fi amrina hada." Ahdatha in Arabic is af'ala. قال ابن مالك وبعد فالفعل من يحكم تصرفه يحوز من لغة الأبواب وسبلها. Like, it's important to know the forms of the verbs to get the meaning. أحدث means to cause something to happen that had not existed before. من العدم إلى الوجود. Sorry, وجود. It didn't exist, now it exists. So in reality, the only one that can really make something ihdath is who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-badi' subhanahu wa ta'ala. إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون. So here it means if someone introduces something into the religion that was not there before. Now, يسمى حمزة الفاعلية أو حمزة المفعول. نعم. بارك الله فيك. الله يفتح عليك. ما شاء الله. So أحدث implies that someone purposely bought something that did not exist before. No.
So would this be Ihsan from the...
Same thing is good. Then same thing as Ihsan. Ahsana. What's another word we say all the time? Has the same form. Islam. Aslama. Man aslama. Man. Aman. No. Man. What did he say? Ahsana. ومن أحسن قولا. لا. أفعل تفضيل. أحسنت. أحسنت. أحسنتي. Good. Good. ما شاء الله. The form is أفعل. أفعل. Good, mashallah. So what it means is someone purposely bought something that did not exist before. So what's the hadith talking about? Al-bid'ah. Al-bid'ah, there are two opinions in the ummah historically about al-bid'ah. The first opinion is the opinion of the minority, and it starts with some of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it was popularized by Imam Malik radiyallahu anhu. And that is anything introduced into the religion after the demise of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba is a bid'ah. It should be rejected. That's the opinion of Imam Malik. It's not the opinion of his madhab. It's the opinion of him as an imam. And who followed him in this is Imam al-Baqilani and others. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and the Hanabila, large population of the Hanabila, although it's not the opinion of the school. Imam Ibn Qayyim radiyallahu anhu, up into Imam Shawkani, until today it's popularized by the Salafi school. Salafi school. Anything introduced in the religion, khalas. The reason that I'm saying that is you can respect people that have different opinions. There's usually some historical trace to the opinions that you find in different groups now, right? The second opinion is the opinion of the majority of the fuqaha, and that's the opinion of Imam al-Shafi'i radiyallahu anhu. But the opinion of Imam Malik and those people who followed him, those great imams and scholars, alhamdulillah, we love them all, inshallah, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's their evidence? This hadith. Also, وَكُلَّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ وَكُلَّ. What does the word kul in Arabic mean? Everything. Why do we use kul though? Ibn Malik said in his Alfiyah that we use kul to show Adam al-Idafa. What do I mean by Adam al-Idafa? I'll explain it in a very simple way. Let's say, like I had a roommate from Karachi in college. This is my boy, Adim Mujahid, mashallah. He's a good guy, man. And his mom could cook, man. You know, she could throw it down. Yeah, exactly. And she made biryani one day I ate it all, man. I just ate the whole thing. So he came back from school, may Allah forgive me. But like necessities allow the haram. So he came home and he was like, because you can smell it, right? And he was like, oh wow. He was doing his MBA. So he was tired, counting numbers and stuff, and I ate his biryani. So he came home and he was like, I smell biryani. He's really happy. Biryani, yani. So in Arabic, I said to him, in English, like, I ate the biryani, man. So he might assume, like, I left a third, I left a fourth, I left a half, a tablespoon. So if I wanted that not to happen, I would say, akaltu biryaniyattak kullaha. So if I say kullaha, that means like there's not one morsel left. It's gone. And that's why I say, for those of us sometimes you feel depressed and you struggle in life, why are things happening to me this way? Wallahu ala kulli shay'in qadir. Like, la takhaf yani. Don't worry. So those scholars say the meaning of the hadith, ظاهر الحديث كل بدعة. كل. There's no other exception to the rule. Imam Shafi'i radiallahu anhu, and he said very beautifully, as quoted by Imam al-Dhahabi in Siyar A'lam an-Nubala, he said that bid'ah are two. Bid'ah madhmuma and bid'ah hasana or mahmuda. People should not disrespect that type of differentiation, because that's related back to our Salaf also. I have a lot of trouble when people try to say, this is the opinion of the Salaf, and the Salaf have 40 opinions on that one issue. That, like Ibn Hazm said, if you say that's the people of Medina's opinion, then what do you do when there's 20 opinions amongst the people of Medina? Like, no one from Medina played with their hands to their sides. Didn't happen, right? People say, that's the people of Medina. ما أحد منهم يصلي هكذا بإرسال أنا مالكي. Doesn't mean it's wrong. There's other evidences, so don't freak out on me. I'm just giving you an example. So when people try to appropriate authority by claiming that the Salaf had one opinion, that would mean there was an ijma. And the ijma amongst the Sahaba is rare. So usually the Sahaba had, the Salaf and the Sahaba had many opinions, right? So here, when we say, bid'ah hasana, bid'ah madhmuma, this is like stupidity, astaghfirullah. That's in fact, it's the opinion of the majority. Majority of fuqaha, that's the opinion of the majority of the madhahib. Imam Shafi said that the bid'ah is taught two, mahmuda and madhmuma. Mahmuda, praiseworthy, madhmuma, which is shamed, disliked, debased. How did he define it? He said bid'ah madhmuma are those things that have no support from the text of Islam or the general principles of Islam. Bid'ah mahmuda are those things that have a general support, evidence, whether explicit or implicit, from sacred sources. That's why we would study usul al-fiqh. So for example, the mawlid. Let me give you an example. Mawlid al-Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Some people say it's a bid'ah. Why? Because they follow what opinion here? The opinion of those people who said kullu bid'ah, kullu bid'ah. Others, they say no. The majority of the fuqaha and the madhahib say it's a commendable practice. Why? It has some support. Imam Ibn Hajar said that the Prophet ﷺ used to fast on the day of his birth. It's mentioned in Sahih Bukhari. Monday is the day I was born. I fast on that day. Shakiran lillah. So it's like that's an example of how we should be thankful for that day. Some people might respond and that's different, but now there is an evidence now is my point. There's something there that has asl, what we call ta'sil al-amal. Imam Suyuti said, also Anas ibn Malik said, as related by Al-Bayhaqi, that the Prophet ﷺ aqqa an nafsihi bi al-Madinah. The Prophet, his aqiqah was twice. Once by his uncle and once he did it for himself. Imam Suyuti said, why would he make aqiqah for himself? He said the Sahaba already knew the rulings of how to do aqiqah. So Imam Suyuti said, just like he used to send salawat upon himself to teach us the importance of salawat, he made aqiqah for himself to show us the importance of his day of birth. You don't have to agree with it or not. That's not the point here, because that's how we're trained. We're trained to argue. I'm not trying to say do this or that. What I'm trying to say is stop the violence. Because both of them now are rooted in what? In the tradition. Both of them are rooted in what? Al-adillah. So that's what Shafi said, rahimahullah, and the majority of the ulama from the Madhahib who followed him, actually all four madhabs, that bid'ah is divided into two. If there is support for it, it's not bid'ah. Like, for example, how we gave example now of al-mawlid, right? If there's no support for it, like I want to pray 25 times a day and call it wajib, la asla lah. La asla lahu. Everybody see that? Another one, group dhikr. It's a big issue. Like people fight over this thing. Can we sit together and remember Allah? Kind of sounds crazy. Can we sit together and remember Allah? Like it's forbidden. But there are great scholars who's considered it not allowed based on their understanding of text, taking into consideration the hadith about warning about innovation. But there are other scholars who say the Prophet said, "Ma ijtama'u qawman fi baytin min buyuti la yatluna kitab Allah." Like the Prophet said that people recite the Quran together, yadhkurun Allah, they'll remember Allah together. So they have an evidence. They have an evidence. So the problem is not the evidence, but what? How those evidences are what? Interpreted. That's a different issue. That's not bid'ah. That's mukhtalafun fi. That's something that we differ over. So now what I want you to think about as because we're running out of time here and it's been long and I know you're tired, mashallah, is most of the things that people are saying bid'ah, like my friend on YouTube who loves me so much. And that person should not be allowed to speak about the deen. You should ask him, where'd you study, where'd you learn from? But now if you have a camera and some nice props and a special type of clothes, anybody believes you're a scholar. SubhanAllah. And you can talk about other scholars and other great ulama and fuqaha, and nobody cares. Like yesterday when someone asked a question, I'm start crying, man. Like, what you say about Sheikh Ibn Bayya? Sheikh Ibn Bayya, like, what did he do? He came from another country to teach you, and you're going to like blast on him? A'udhu billah, man. A'udhu billah. We can differ with people. Like, you don't have to agree with everything someone says, but we can differ with class and akhlaq and adab. You know, and people now online and people like making recordings and stuff, man, it seems to me there's just like, they have like, not that person, but it seems that there's like a psychosis. Like they like being mean to people. Like they enjoy beating people down. These people should not be given religious leadership. Religious leadership is responsibility. One of the most important things any Muslim leader can do is make sure Muslims don't kill themselves and destroy their communities. When I became Muslim in a certain city, the community had just bought 7 acres of land with a school on it and a gym. Okay? 4 months after they bought it, there was this massive fight in the masjid. From that's 1992, till now, that gym has never been used. The land has never been used. It's like a waste of resources, because someone's on the truth and someone else is on what? Falsehood. Like, subhanAllah, man, how many youth in Oklahoma City we lost because we had no facilities for them? Like, no one saw that. So fitna. So here, what I want you to learn from this hadith, man, is be advocates in your community for balance. Like, don't destroy people. Like, honestly, I'm not Salafi. I don't agree with the Salafi stuff. But there still are Muslim brothers and sisters, man. Like, you can't throw them out of masajid. You can't make them feel uncomfortable. I'm not a hardcore traditionalist. I don't belong to a Turuq, Sufiya. Like, I'm just the white guy who converted, who happened to study. Like, I don't know where I am in this whole mix. But we shouldn't push them out of the communities either. Like, those people have something. That's why Sheikh Zakaria Ansari said Islam is like a big ocean. Every part that you drink from is sweet, like a large pond of sweet water. Like, everybody has something good. We can be critical of each other. We're not going to sing Kumbaya. You know what I mean? We can have those discussions, but we should do it without destroying ourselves. That's the point. So here, the idea of bid'ah, another example, group dhikr. Imam Shafi and them, they say la. And the majority of the fuqaha, there's supporting evidences to show that the Sahaba, in fact 14 hadith, show that they gathered together and they made dhikr together. So here you have supporting evidence. Here people who say there's no supporting evidence, but both of them are rooted in what? In the tradition. So take it easy, man. Yeah.
We go back to talking about right at the beginning, using weak hadith on both sides. Whereas one is using a sahih hadith, the other side is using a weak hadith. And the other side is saying, we're using our opinion is sahih hadith, whereas they're using a weak hadith. Wouldn't that, by common sense, take precedence? Because you have two hadiths about one topic, one sahih, one weak, wouldn't you take the sahih one?
So you're saying if the scholars differ on an issue, whether it's innovation or not or whatever, one is using a weak hadith, one is using a strong hadith, should you go with the strong hadith? In a perfect situation, yes. But if that weak hadith, alayhi amal, if that weak hadith, the majority of the ummah acted on it from the beginning till now, that's a different issue. Because the sahih hadith that wasn't acted on, there's a long discussion about that. But that usually never is how it is. It's never that clear cut. In fact, what I see is people who are arguing do bad research about their opponent. So they use this weak hadith, like the Hanafi method. People say, they always use weak hadith. Actually, when you go and research their evidences, like for example, can a woman marry without a wali? Always the opponents will say la nikah illa bi wali, and there's no marriage without a wali. So this hadith, they interpret it wrong. Da, da, da. But then when you go to the Hanafi method, wahabat nafsaha li nabi, they have like a number of evidences. Whether you agree with them or not, it's not the point. What I'm saying is they have a number of evidences. Like I support it. I think if a woman's old enough, she should marry herself, because what's happening now is parents aren't letting their daughters get married and they're losing their minds. And they get 40 and 30 and some of them are leaving Islam. Right? Al-Ahnaf innahum adilla qawiyya. It's not just one evidence. So usually the problem is with not the guy that has the opinion, but the person that's arguing with them. Like the Malikis, people say like when we pray with our hands, oh, Imam Malik was beaten, that's why I put his hands. That's not our evidence, man. So there's always a convenient argument. So it's very rare that you're going to find. For example, dhikr, in group dhikr, most of the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. رواه البخاري وراه مسلم أو بيهقي في سننه بأسانيد صحيحة. So the problem is not the hadith, but the application and understanding of the hadith.
So when people, for example, people say, oh, we used to get together and make remembrance of Allah, but their interpretation of this is this type of remembrance of Allah, not actually sitting there and making Allah subhanAllah all together.
But the hadith says yusabbihun Allah. It says subhanallah. So actually, the people who say that you can do group dhikr are going with the explicit meaning of the text without inferring anything. Those who say that this hadith that says they gathered together and made dhikr of Allah doesn't mean they gathered together and made dhikr of Allah, that's ta'weel. You understand? But the explicit meaning of the zahir of the text is what? That they gathered together and did what? They made dhikr. So, obviously you can see, I believe we need to do group dhikr because our hearts are freaking dry, man. Our communities are jaffa. Because there's mafish dhikr. Can you imagine we just sit around, we talk about dunya, I see you. We talk about dunya, we talk about this, we talk about that, but we don't have group dhikr. Our children are not, I believe we should have shahada parties for Muslim kids in our communities. We don't have a culture of faith. We don't acculturize faith. Someone say that's bid'ah, because tajdeedul iman there's so many hadith about renewing iman and renewing Islam. So and a lot of young Muslims, they come here at 25, 30, they're like, I never really accepted Islam, dude. I was born with it, oh no, I get a silver crest in my mouth and stuff, and Whereas no, if at a certain age you sit down and explain to them, right, this is what Islam is, what are your questions? Do you amanta billah? Ashhadu an la. We should have a party for them, for boys and girls. Should create that culture in our community of faith? And we don't do that. So dhikr, culturizing our religion to a certain degree so that we have meaning and people remember. their shahada, super important, man. Then there's like relationship between the convert. I took shahada, I did shahada too, man. Like, I accepted my faith. Right? So the zahir of the hadith, yatluna kitab Allah, zahir yusabbihun Allah, and also people say that group dhikr is the sunnah of the malaika. وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. The malaika remember Allah together? Will the malaika make bid'ah? إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Allah and His angels send salawat upon the Prophet. O believers, send salawat on the Prophet. That's why some ulama said when you send salawat upon the Prophet, at that moment you are in tune with the sunnah of the malaika and the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sayyidina Musa and Sayyidina Harun, when they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Sayyidina Musa asked him to help me speak clearly, why? كَيْ نُسَبِّحَكَ كَثِيرًا وَنَذْكُرَكَ كَثِيرًا. So we can praise you, we can magnify you. So there's like strong evidences for that. So we have to be very careful about both sides of the equation. We know who I'm talking about, right? Tend to present very superficial arguments vis-a-vis their group that they're arguing with. The job is to get beyond, and most of that's on the internet. The internet is not a place to do research, I mean, at a deeper level, right? There's more to it than that, inshallah. More to that. Khalas? No.
So, like bid'ah hasana, some people, you know, some cultures, when somebody's studying the Quran, they do like a party or something. Would those be okay, even though mine?
Wallahi, you know the Ameen ceremony for kids in the Desi culture, it's beautiful. We should do that for our kids, where a child, like converts. How many of you here are converts? Anyone besides me? Like, we don't have a culture, man. We haven't created a culture for ourselves, right? In some community, like community of Imam Dabidi Muhammad, like there's a culture there. But in general, the larger population of converts, like, we're losing our children because we don't have a culture for them to fall into. Like, there's a need for the alternative messaging. That's why I tell people who come from like Muslim countries, your parents, like, keep that cultural part of the deen too, because it's important, man. Certain ceremonial acts that, you know, help you keep your iman, like that one, the Ameen ceremony. So in Pakistan, right, you do Yasrana Quran. I know the whole situation. And then after you do Yasrana Quran, like a Maulana Saab comes, and you, Sahib is a car, and you read the Quran with that Imam from the beginning to the end. That Imam who has ijazah and is like a good qari. And then afterwards you do what? You have a party. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's the way and people make fun of it. Oh, you just read Quran once, you forgot it for the rest of your life. Like, what? Like, don't say it like that, man. That's not, that's so bakwas, man. It's like, sorry, I should have said that. It's wrong. No, like, we need those, like, we have to create a culture in this community. And in the name of bid'ah, the most gracious, the most merciful, people will not allow any culture to be developed in the Muslim community. Like Isra al-Mi'raj. Not all the scholars, so you're going to hear that, well, most scholars don't really know when it was. That's not true. Or you're going to hear, you know, most of the scholars say that the date of the Prophet's birthday is not authentic. That's not also true. The majority of the scholars were of the opinion that it is on that day. So you get like one opinion, and then that becomes a construction, it becomes believed. That's dangerous. Oh, the majority of the Salafis hate this, and they're harsh, and they're rude, and they hate. It's not true. It's bad research. Right? So we need to create a sense of advocacy for equilibrium in our communities. That's why I tell people the best position on these issues, I'm pro-choice, man. I'm pro-choice. You want to do it? Do it. You don't want to do it? Don't come. But don't make trouble. Want to pray 20? 20. Want to pray 8? Pray 8. It's okay. We're going to pray 20. So, like, we've made these things like much more problematic than they need to be. So he said, "Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha." Here's something awesome. He said, "Fi amrina." He said, "Fi dinina, fi islamina." He said, "Fi amrina." This affair, hadha, and actually means affair this. So the ism ishara comes after the. Yeah, why? To show this deen is amazing. Rajulun hadha, dinuna hadha, أمرنا هذا. It's used to show. Wow. And ha in Arabic is harf al-tanbih. That is the ism ishara. Ha means wow. That means this. It's hard to translate. It's like awesome. Ma laysa minhu. Also they say here ma yufidu umum. Anything that's not from it. So that supports the opinion of who? Imam Malik. فَهُوَ رَدْ. It's going to be rejected. Imam Shafi, what is the evidence as we finish? He said, man, the hadith for man sanna sunnah hasanatan, whoever starts a good sunnah. Also the actions of Sayyidina Bilal when he used to pray 2 rakat after wudu. Probably ask him, what do you do? He said, I pray. Well, he used to pray whatever was written for him. Like all of that, when the man said, the Prophet came from ruku, said, Sima Rabbana wa laka hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fi. That showed the Sahaba, right? Brought Abdullah bin Umar adds to the adhan. He has a different hayya ala al-khayr al-amal. That's from Abdullah bin Umar radiyallahu anhu. No one ma ankara alayhi ahadun. So Imam Shafi says, here's examples where Sahaba did things. Nobody called them ashab al-bid'ah. A'udhu billah. And I've seen actually some really crazy stuff. People out of ignorance. So, the hadith of Abu Hurairah when he said the Prophet would make wudu and he would extend the wudu. Like Abu Hurairah would extend his wudu for the light to be longer on his limbs. I've actually read where someone said like, وَهَذِهِ الْبِدْعَةِ. Like this is Abu Hurairah, man. Abu Hurairah's not doing bid'ah, bro. Like relax. Relax. Take it easy. But the point is we need to respect each other. We can differ. We can even have some fun with each other and so on and so forth. But we need to stop destroying communities and wasting resources. It's ridiculous. Oh, let's create a new masjid. Like, why? You have a masjid. Why do you want to waste resources? We don't have the budget to be divided right now. It's not in our budget. Then he mentions the other narration, مَنْ عَمِلَ عَمَلًا لَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْرُنَا فَهُوَ رَدٌّ. Whoever acts, aywa.
Can the huwa go back to mind for the person, and not for the
act?
Yeah.
قد يكون. Can it go back for the fa'il, the mubtadi'? He's rejected, but the meaning is going to be the same. He's rejected or the act is rejected. But usually the damir ya'ud ala al-aqrab. Right? Usually it goes back to what's closer to it. But it could be both of them. Good question, man. Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad. Also whoever acts. And there's a long discussion about that. That when we come back, insha'Allah ta'ala, next time we'll mention. So alhamdulillah, we finished 5 hadith. And this actually is how we study. It's not about how fast you go. Right? It's about what you take.
Quality over quantity.
Quality over quantity. And believe me, we didn't give it a lot. Just a few things. But the next hadith, before we finish, I want you to pay attention to something. The hadith starts, the hadith of Nu'man. And Nu'man, subhanallah, his father and his grandfather were all sahabi. The hadith starts with halal and haram, but then it ends with the heart. Usually, the Prophet ﷺ would always do that because when people study fiqh or halal and haram a lot, the propensity to become judgmental and harsh happens. So think about it. Who is the most knowledgeable person of halal and haram in the ummah? Is who? After the Prophet, man. Come on, give me a break. Like, who is the most knowledgeable sahabi? Who do you think? The Prophet says, أَعْلَمُ بِالْحَلَالِ وَالْحَرَامِ. Mu'adh. Who said that? MashaAllah. Oh, abang. Dari mana? Alhamdulillah. We speak a little Malaysian, So, watch yourself. So, everyone's like, what just happened? So, shukur. So, is Mu'adh. Wallahi, I know Hib Mu'adh, man. But think about it. Most of the hadith, who can think of one hadith where the Prophet says something to Mu'adh? Like, who knows that hadith? Just think of like one of their interactions. Guarding the tongue. Good. What else? Was Ibn Abbas? Good try. If I was going to make a mistake, I'll make it. أصفب الخطأ شئت بها. I love you for the sake of Allah. So watch your tongue. I love you for the sake of Allah. That happened on more than a number of occasions. Ya Mu'adh, wallahi inni uhibbuk. What else? Yeah, we went to Yemen. What did he tell him?
First call them to have that, follow that.
So he gives them direct, like, call them to this, call them to that, and if they do this, do that. But was that last moments of Mu'adh in Yemen, go research it and make a khutbah about it. And try not to cry, man. What in the Muwatta, Mu'adh said, the last thing I heard the Prophet say to me was what? The last thing I ever heard him say to me is what? Ahsin khulaqak linas. Be good to people. So Mu'adh is this faqih, this great scholar, but we constantly see the Prophet reminding him of the sciences of the heart, the sciences of character. Because people who usually learn a lot about the halal and haram tend to be what? Harsh, tough. Watch your tongue. Watch your soul. Be good to people. I love you. Right? He teaches them emotions. Because lawyers tend to be harsh, like in our tradition, fuqaha, right? So you see, even though he's the most knowledgeable of halal and haram, the Prophet constantly reminds him of what? Being good to people. Because you see all the time people learn religion, they start to learn this is permissible, this is innovation. What happens to them? What do they usually start doing? They start tripping. Start like going off on people. Yeah, we shouldn't use, not you, but like this word haram, please be careful. Because haram, like, that's something we shouldn't make fun of, man. You know, but the point is, here halal, haram, and then the last part of the hadith is what? Like keep the balance. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wa yakum. MashaAllah, it's like a lot of people here, and it's early, you're tired, but the only person you can do this for is the Prophet. You know, and inshallah, every time we come, inshallah, we'll try to read like 5, 6. I'm yours, I don't care, I can come early, it's not a problem. We're not charging anybody for this. This is a hadith of the Prophet. How we're going to charge people to study hadith of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? La as'alukum alayhi ajra except al-halawa. Wal-ahwa. So if you have any questions, we'll take 10 minutes or so for questions. Yes, sir.
When it comes to bid'ah, like on matters that weren't present in the past, and on like technology and things, what's the common rule?
So there's 3 points here. He's asking about like things that are outside of the religion. All that falls under bid'ah hasana, as long as it doesn't. It's not bid'ah, first of all, like how we understand it. It's bid'ah in the meaning. And the only time it would take a ruling if it was like harming society, harming our environment. Number 2, the common question is, well, the Prophet and his companions didn't do it. Like you hear that all the time. Like, why would I do something that the Prophet and his companions never did? That statement goes against one of the most important axioms in usul fiqh, mentioned by all of our great scholars in usul, the Hanafis and the others, because there's 2 schools in usul fiqh. And that is, you want to write this down. At-tarku laysa bil-hujjah. At-tarku laysa bil-hujjah. Meaning that just because the Prophet and his companions didn't do it, that's not a proof. That axiom is mentioned by Imam, because as-sukut laysa bi-dalil, except unless it happened from the Prophet ﷺ. Because khitab Allah, we don't have time to talk about this axiom, but inshallah when I come in the future, we'll actually read a part of a book written by one of the old scholars in usul fiqh on this axiom. At-tark laysa bil-hujjah. Because imagine, when Sayyidina Umar, he gathered the people to pray Taraweeh, fi dalil. So, people will say, here when he said bid'ah hasana, this is the bid'ah meaning lughawiyah, like the meaning of it. It's not strong. It's not strong because he did something the Prophet did before, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there's dalil for it. So you can't say that. But for example, like compiling the Quran, tadween al-Quran, did the Prophet ﷺ do it? Tark laysa bil-hujjah. The mihrab in the masjid, is that from the time of the Prophet ﷺ? Tark laysa bil-hujjah. So that is a complicated axiom, But in general, a tark is not an evidence. Tark laysa bil hujjah. There's conditions for it. There's conditions for it. Right? But in general, a tark laysa bil hujjah. Some people tell you they didn't do it. Says, man, this is like you're just thinking. You ask them, where did you learn that from? What book of usul said that tark bil hujjah? Nobody said that from Ahl Sunnah. Except maybe here and there, but the general opinion was no. The third question, no, that was two, right? So it was technology, and then what I took from you is a tark laysa bil hujjah. Tark laysa bil hujjah. The Salafi school, hafidhahumullah, they say a tark bil hujjah. But what we need to do is ask them, min ayna jittum bihada? With respect also. Because they're going to have some evidences for that, of course. They're going to have some scholars to support that. We should respect that. But we don't have to, if you're Salafi, not to disrespect you also. We don't have to agree with that. Right? But at least let's have a conversation about, let's see, where were the majority, historically, of the Muslims? The masses of the fuqaha and the scholars of usul al-fiqh. From the time of the Sahaba till now, they say, at-tark laysa bil hujjah. Yes?
Also in his farewell khutbah, didn't he say, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that those who pass this on to those who come after me, they'll understand me better than you do?
He said maybe. He said maybe the person who you, yeah.
But can that be used as a dalil, kind of dalil?
For what?
For doing something that wasn't exactly done in the Prophet's day. Is that one more dalil? Can you use the
Scholars might be shy to say like we understood better than them, right? But it could be used to show that our scholars, yeah, we can follow them, we can emulate them, they have the understanding of the religion. And the Prophet said, al-ulama warathatul anbiya, scholars are inheritors of the prophets. Yes, ma'am. Sure, please.
People sometimes it's said against al-Ghazali that he uses, that's a da'if, a hadith da'if. Does that make him, he surely must have known it was da'if, and he surely must have been explicit on what he was doing. He's rock solid. You can't, there must be some reason for his using that da'if hadith, and you can't catch him out on it.
So this is a beautiful question about Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. She's asking, some people in the Ihya al-Ulumuddin, they've criticized him for using weak hadith. Actually, many of the narrations in that book are actually fabricated texts. Does that mean, not many, but a good number, does that mean that he was bad or that we should reject that book? No, of course not. Even Ibn Taymiyyah said the benefit of that book is greater than its harm. But it's very difficult to find scholars who mastered all the sciences. It's hard. It's difficult. And Imam Ghazali, his specialty was Sharia and Usul, and then Tasawwuf and other areas. So he wasn't known as a master of a scholar of Hadith. And think about it, Imam Ghazali lived in an age where books weren't rampant, manuscripts, authentic manuscripts were hard to find and verify. So it doesn't take anything away from him in that sense. But at the same time, all of us are open to certain criticisms. All of us should be subjected to like an academic standard. So Al-Hafiz al-Iraqi is a great scholar from Egypt, from the 7th or 8th, 6th century. He actually took the Ihya and did all the hadith from it, showed you where this hadith is from, that hadith is from, this hadith is from. But in general, he didn't use a lot of fabricated hadith, right? One of the bigger problems people have with the Ihya sometimes are the stories that might be a little bit over embellished. But still, it's a great book, man. They say, Man laysa indahu ihya fahuwa laysa bimuhi. Like, who doesn't have the ihya doesn't have the ihya. Like, who doesn't have life doesn't have life, right? And I teach that book in Boston. Sheikh Majid teaches it. And we can see the ulama throughout history have always taught the ihya. In Egypt, I think, for over at least 900 years, there's been a constant class on the ihya in Cairo. It hasn't stopped. So he was rock solid, rahimahullah, hujjatul Islam. Imam al-Dhahabi, because Imam al-Ghazali now has become an avatar, and Ibn Taymiyyah has become an avatar. Like, one is used to attack a certain persuasion, the other is used to attack another persuasion. That's not right. That's not right. Imam al-Dhahabi was the student of Ibn Taymiyyah. Imam al-Dhahabi wrote a book about the history of all the scholars from the time of the Prophet till his time, called Siyar A'lam an-Nubala. It's really huge. So he has a beautiful section on Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. And he mentions, you know who was really critical of Imam al-Ghazali? This is really funny. I mean, think about it. Where were his books burned? Where were the books of al-Ghazali burned? Who knows? In Spain, Andalus. Who were the scholars in Spain? Ash'ari Sufis. Like, have you ever thought about it? They're Ash'ari Sufi. Like, why would some of them, Tortusha al-Maliki especially, is very tough, you know. Not all of them, but why would they have his books burned? Because they were like, he's not Ash'ari enough. He's not Sufi enough. So you can see how times have changed, right? But Imam al-Zahabi, who I love, I think he was just so incredible. He mentions like these criticisms against Abu Hamid. Like some of them are ridiculous. Some of them say he wasn't Muslim. All kind of stuff. And then al-Zahabi responds very academically and says like, no, he didn't say that, or this is not what he meant, or. And then at the end he says, فَأَيْنَ مِثَالُ أَبِي حَمَدْ فِي أَيَامِنَا هَذِهِ. He says like, where is someone like him now? So, you know, we can be, the problem in our community is that, and I'm not referring to you, ma'am, is that like criticism is suddenly seen as a personal attack. Like, no, it's just like, you know, there's certain positions like the Hanbalis, they have a poem where Ibn Taymiyyah went out of our madhab, like the four madhab, right? That's just academics. You know who Ibn Taymiyyah's best friend was? Imam Ibn al-Jazari. Ibn al-Jazari is a huge Sufi, man. Like off the chain Sufi. Okay? In fact, when Ibn Taymiyyah died, he went to the grave of Ibn Taymiyyah, read Surah Al-Ikhlas 1,000 times. Like Ibn Taymiyyah would have been mad at him for doing that. Like, but that's his boy, man. That's his boy. And then he bought the imama of Ibn Taymiyyah for 2,000 dinar and used to wear it for tabarruk. Like Ibn Taymiyyah would have been mad at him. Like, you making tabarruk for my imama, dude? But sadaqah. So sometimes we forget, like, these people were friends. These people have, so their polemic is maybe harsh, but their relationship is very real. Very real. And unfortunately in this age we've really forgot. That's why, you know, the issue with the guy on YouTube, like my issue is not a personal issue. But my issue, no, it's okay, I don't care. My issue is like how you're making a name for yourself by just blasting on other people.
Also, it's dangerous to whip up hatred.
Yeah, he said things about me that are completely untrue.
That doesn't lead to even worse people doing even worse things.
Exactly, yeah. And may Allah, you know, I love the brother for the sake of Allah, nahnu ikhwa. But we really need to be careful that we make our name for ourselves by destroying other people. It's not acceptable, it's not good. Make a name for yourself by praying in the night. Making dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. فَضَّل.
In the third hadith, the ordering of the pillars is different than in the second hadith. Is there a point of benefit?
Because Hajj and so on. Wallahu a'lam. Why does the order change? Allahu a'lam. Faddal.
One of those topics, like human marriage, and was talking about it.
What?
I said, bid'ah is like one of those topics about human marriage.
Oh, yeah.
One of the bayat says, Dr. Archie mentioned to the Islamic canon that Islam should be the accelerator and the brake for us here, Muslims in America. The accelerator, what pushes us forward, what creates our culture, but at the same time, that brake that we're going too far to know, well, all right, we need to back up a little bit. How do we know? How do we recognize that brake? How do we know when we're going too far? For example, just as an example, maybe a bad example, we start doing parties for, you know, our kids who memorize the family and stuff like that. We start doing parties for. We start going bigger things and start going more and then more and more. So how do we find that break?
No, but now you're creating a hypothetical. Number one, having a party for someone who memorizes the Quran was done by the Salaf.
And then,
Yeah, but see, this is, I'm just having fun with you, right? I'm going to play the angel's advocate here. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about Iman, وَبِذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا وَبِذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا. Allah said, celebrate Iman. هذه الأدلة. So what could be bad that comes out of that? That's what my question is to you. Because you were like, and so on and so on. No, I don't want and so on and so on. I want like a real example.
The reason I'm I'm asking this because
But no, I want a real example. I don't want a theoretical.
There's an example online that I saw, or I don't know if it's a satire website, but where you can buy people to do deeds for you.
No, but that's a different. But wait a second. Slow down, guys. Slow down. Buy people to.
this is my other Russian privilege.
If I was gonna make a mistake, man, that would be the best mistake. Yeah, but that's different. But no one here is like, we're not saying, okay, you can pay me to make umrah for you.
But some could
Yeah. But this has no. Wait. Fadal, go ahead. I'm trying to say something, but it's okay. Point is, that is not related. You guys are mixing mauz hindi ma burtaqala. Okay? You're mixing, fruit juices. We're talking now, if we could just stay for 1 minute, if we could just stay focused on what you're talking about, and then we'll get to the, are you allowed to pay someone to do ibadah for you? It's actually in the books of fiqh. It's in the chapter of rentals. Because you know what? You can't pay someone to teach you Quran. But you can't pay someone to pray salah for you. Right? But that's a different issue. Now we're talking about celebration of shahada, celebration of someone memorizes the Quran, and then you said, and then it's not going to stop. Okay, give me that. Give me an example of what would be the problem.
So here's the problem. So you start off with a small event with family and friends, right, as a commemoration, and then it starts becoming a social competition for status, and then people are renting out expensive hotels, inviting hundreds of people, spending tens of thousands of dollars on something that is a commemoration, but it becomes more of a competition as opposed to
Yeah, but that's not what we wouldn't base a ruling on that hypothetical. That's people's niyyah. So now I'm being asked to have a bad assumption about the Muslims. If it happens, then we could tell people, hey, fear Allah, don't do this. But that's not a reason to stop it. Same thing could be said about iftar. Like, we don't stop iftars. You understand what I'm saying? Like that's the issue of akhlaqiyat. Like, we have to, like now, weddings became baby showers. Right? I know in certain communities now it became ridiculously competitive. That's not healthy. So I understand what you're saying. So there we need to warn people, advise people, remind people, right? But the same thing could happen with iftar.
Yeah, I'm with you.
No, it's okay. No. But and I'm not. Don't like. I'm happy that we're having this. I think this is really awesome. Have this kind of discussion. So don't. I never take it personally, inshallah, except when the Russian guy answers. Only when he gets it wrong. Yeah. So,
for example, I explained, like you said, angels advocate. We say, let's have a note. So the motive starts by talking when we start talking about life and our love for him, his love for us. Next time we're doing it, okay, we're going to do salawat ala nabi. And we start doing that. The next thing we know, where, I know some people believe that, okay, now we got to stand up and make dhikr of the Prophet because he's now here with us. And then it's like, okay, now that he's here with us, it starts like...
But the majority of the Muslims don't do these things. I'm
horrible at giving examples. Because the argument of people saying, no, we can't do this bid'ah is because it's going to escalate to that. If it starts out...
But that's not a reason that's what's called saddu dhara'iyah. We say saddu dhara'iyah can only be used in the face of yaqeen. Not with dhann. Like, I've known people who do stand. It's less than 5% of people I ever met in my life. The masses, let's invert it. Let's invert this discussion. So let's say we do shahada, celebration, with our children. We do the Amin, which is from the Salaf al-Salih. I mean, celebrating Iman, وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَامِ اللَّهِ, that's not even a discussion about this. But let's say that Mawlid, for example. Let's invert it. What are the benefits? I say in general, like for creating a culture for our kids, man. Familiarizing them with the Prophet. Most people don't even know what day Hijri it is right now. And we forgot it. Right? So, I think that you have to weigh the harms and benefits. For me, the benefits are greater. And then if we see excess and opulence and bid'ah within these acts or things that don't need to be there, we have to Which is worse, not allowing them to create a culture and becoming kuffar and losing themselves in the society and not having any type of acculturation religiously, or trying to create some kind of... And you know what's interesting is this discussion only happens for us in America. Malaysians have their culture. Pakistan, they have their culture. Libya, they have their culture. Egypt, they have their culture. Why is the American Muslim subjected to this kind of microscopic analysis? Yeah, because there's a sense of insecurity rooted in America. And I believe it's unjust. And it goes back, us as converts, man, we don't have, like, religiously, we don't have much of a culture, man. We don't have a really, our kids, a lot of us can't afford, like many of you, to send our kids to, like, 5 kids to Islamic schools. So it's hard to create within our niche a culture. Where in every other Muslim country in the world, right, there's a culture around things, which falls under maslaha, which falls under bid'ah hasana, which falls under, you know, achieving a greater good, a greater goal. So, you know, I mean, and that's why you have scholars. So how do you know to put on the gas? That's the job of asking the people of ilm, asking the people of knowledge who live here. Another problem I have is we keep undermining our scholars in America and outsourcing them to people overseas, because we're fixated on overseas. Doesn't mean that overseas scholars aren't qualified. No, man, we respect them, we love them. I went to Jeddah to talk to Sheikh Mumbai about one hadith, man. Point is, if we don't build scholarship in our country, we're going to constantly have problems, especially in mu'amalat. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you know, everything like once. So sometimes we spend money like for nothing, you know, for nothing. If we spend it for religious, to encourage people to go through the Islam, is much better than we go for something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sadaqt.
Yeah, Islam is liberal. Many liberal. You know, Islam, like the Muslims, about the Muslims. So we encourage the Muslims to spend the money for the Islam.
Sah, barakallahu feek.
What is your advice on picking a madhab? And this is a 3-part question. What is your advice on picking a madhab? Do you believe it's required? And last question is, why can't you just pick and choose the most best?
So what's my advice on picking a madhab? Your madhab here is Majdiyin. Or Majdiya. Ma Majid. Al-Mustafti ala madhab al-Mufti. I think that's the axiom. You're on the madhab of the scholar you ask, first of all. Secondly, who should learn a madhab? Students of knowledge, imams, scholars. Like that's where, you know, they need to, because locally, if you learn a madhab, it's great, but don't learn it to differ with like your imams in their local mosque. Like that's the problem, right? So you learn it for your own enjoyment, to make sure that your practice is sound, right? But then at the same time, like if you have someone like Imam Majid in your community, he's teaching you fiqh and stuff, like learn from him. Learn from him. Number 3, the madhab itself is not an obligation to know, but it's an obligation to ask the people who know. To ask the scholars around us. We'll take one more question and then have to go. Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes I find, like new converts, my concern always is solidifying their Iman. But then sometimes I find it difficult to, like if people ask me how to pray, I'm fine with that. Like I can tell people how to pray. But I struggle with how to bring them into Salah gradually so they establish. Like, do you have any...
What do you mean by bring them into Salah gradually?
Sometimes people will say, just come and pray in English, do this. And I struggle with where is the line. I want people... Right. Do you have any advice?
So, you know, in Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, Imam Ibn Kathir mentions a group of people came to the Prophet ﷺ, and they said, we'll become Muslim, but we're not going to make jihad and we're not going to make zakat. He let them become Muslim. In fact, he said to the companions, let the Iman come to their hearts, and they'll do that later on. Another also authentic narration, maybe from Al-Bayhaqi, I can't remember now, I'm getting old and this coffee's cold, is that a group of people came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said, we're only going to pray twice a day. He said, okay, no problem. So honestly, I think with new converts, if Islam hasn't been explained properly to them in the beginning, that's where a lot of the problems happen. Like we tell people, like, when you become Muslim, like, you have to pray 5 times a day. Like, that's part of your Islam. Like, that's important to tell people in the beginning so they know what they're getting into, right? Or that they can build up to that moment. Like for me, before I became Muslim, I read about, I got to pray 5 times a day. Like, wow, I got to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and pray. That was like a major kind of discussion I had to have with myself. I say people give people time, but there needs to be healthy agitation. There's the accelerator, there's the brake. Accelerator is motivation, the brake is agitation. There needs to be both. What's happening now is people are becoming Muslim. I have a problem with people who are becoming Muslim and suddenly want to change Islam. And I want to do I want to reform this religion. When did you become Muslim? Yesterday. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Like reform, start with yourself, learn the basics. Learn the basics for yourself, have the basic practices down, and then move from there. If people say, no, I have a problem with the basics, then that's where we need to work. Those fundamental principles have to be there. So what I've done with people when they convert, or revert, whatever word, revert's a misuse of the language, because it implies they become kafir every day and then come back to Iman. It's like horrible use of the active participle. But what I do is allow people to fall into their own pace kind of for that first year, 6 months. And I don't just slam things on them, but slowly remind them nicely, bring them to halaqat, give them books to read on their own. Books are very powerful. Like when I was a convert, I read books, and that's how I got to do this. Oh, wow, I didn't know. Oh, okay. It's kind of a self-awakening. But I don't think there's one answer for people. Like, for example, if you have a convert who has a substance abuse problem, it's going to be very difficult to talk to them about, the inner workings of theology. You have a convert who has problems at home. You have a convert that has some, economic challenges. So those are things that need to be worked out. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs for students, those hierarchy of needs need to be taken care of before people are really going to be able to take on theology. But I give people time, man. Give people time. Let them mold. But then, from time to time, little agitation, but not constantly. We'll take one more question and we're out the door, inshallah. Yes?
Do you feel like sometimes when people are harsh, I'm not saying that you should do that, but do you feel like they do that to motivate people because they really care, and at the same time they want to help the judgment for not giving their best effort?
Well, of course, but sometimes harshness is needed. I'm not by any means encouraging always to be nice, right? Look at Frank Vogel, where I got him. So there are times where you need to be firm with people. That's just a reality, but the norm is to be violent, wise, and so on and so forth. Look at Surah Al-Kafirun. Al-Razi said, Allah said to the Prophet, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. He said here the qul is different than قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. قُلْ هُوَ الْأَحَدُ is to teach people. But the qul and قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ, you feel like Allah is prodding the Prophet to say it. So Al-Razi said because the Prophet, his nature is soft, so Allah orders him to be harsh. Prophet, his nature, ya kafir, it's not the Prophet's nature. So Allah has to tell him, you have to say it. So, I'm sorry to say this, that's very selfish. I want to be successful in the hereafter, so I'm going to be a jerk to you. It's not good. I want to be successful in the hereafter, so I'm going to be rude. No, man. We have to see where people are. Some people do need harshness, right? Some people need softness. Some people need warm water. Depends where they are and where, what's going to be best for them. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أن يكتب لنا حسناتنا إن شاء الله لكي نقابله إن شاء الله صالحين مؤمنين به سبحانه وتعالى. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this gathering inshallah for us and not against us. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to unite us with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Aminin bihi subhanahu. We ask Allah to guide the parents and family of our convert community, and to bless their families, and to protect the people of Syria and Egypt and Libya and Somal and Kashmir and Pakistan and all 57 Muslim countries, as well as non-Muslim countries. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Jazakumullahu khairan for coming and staying so late. Enjoy your sleep, inshallah.